Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 Adaptive Skateboard Education Summit. This is something we do annually with a specific focus on different areas of skateboard education, solely for the purpose to grow awareness of how people can learn, how people can teach it, and in an effort to really grow the sport through really, it's kind of a grassroots effort internationally to bring that awareness up and bring more people into skateboarding, and kind of have this approach that skateboarding is for everyone. And at UC, our mission is to educate anyone who wants to help someone else learn how to skateboard. And we offer obviously training and certification for those things, but the mission really is just to empower people to change someone's life through skateboarding. And that's it's a simple mission, but really you never know where a child or where a person is going to find empowerment through, and what they're going to find it through. And when they do, their life changes forever. And that is something that we are so proud to be a part of every time it happens, and both directly and indirectly. So we have a lot of great presenters today, and we're really excited. We have a really intimate setting this year, which I like. Um, and I'm very excited to see what everybody brings to share. And I'm excited then to turn this into content that we will use to help educate people in that mission of coaching people of every ability. And that's really the mission. It's like understanding abilities, not disabilities, and recognizing that every lesson taught on skateboard or in any sport or any activity, they're all adaptive lessons. Every person we work with has some kind of adaptation that we have to learn how to navigate through and support. A lot of times that's emotional for a lot of people. Fear is a massive impact, or has a massive impact on a person's progression and the way they learn. And learning how to navigate all of the emotions, fear, anger, frustration, all these things are what make coaching so interesting, unique, exciting, and fun. It's what inspires me to want to do it and continue to do it. So looking forward to learning from everyone today. And Joe, do you have anything you'd like to add to the introduction?
Yes, our next guest. Our first guest, Andy Duran, is he's an extraordinary human being who has created a movement of helping people. He calls them plus size big people get onto skateboards, and these are typically a group of people who you wouldn't expect to be, or are told probably a lot of times that, hey, you can't do sports, or you certainly can't do skateboarding. And I've seen Andy skateboard. He's a good skateboarder by any measure, and he's also done a lot to create a great community, of just a really inclusive community that are bringing a lot of people on board and helping them live happier, healthier lives because of it. So without further ado, we need to unblock Andy's mute so he can start, and we'll be able to meet him. Andy, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, both of you, and for that sweet introduction. Yeah, hey everybody. Should I just go ahead and say a little bit about
Yeah, well,
myself
tell
now?
us.
Yeah.
Well, you founded an organization called.
Chub rolls. Yeah. So,
Andy,
like
did you say Chub Rolls?
I sure did. It's I got it
That's
actually
such a sick name.
in my uh, in my name here, so folks can find it. It's Chub rolls with a Z. And yeah, it's thank you. Yeah, I really love the name too. So we are a group of people, fat folks, plus size folks that are skaters, inspired to teach and help other big bodied folks skate as well. So kind of a beginner for beginner, or like um, kind of group sharing process, as well as content that we are putting out there as well. Oh, thank you, Joe. Yeah, so and that's for Instagram and Facebook. So folks can find us. You can also just Google Chub Rolls. There's quite a bit of media that we've gotten over the last couple of years, which has been really swell. But yeah, so we have monthly events. We also have a pretty lively Instagram. We create content, and we teach people how to skate. And so it's all about adaptive skating and kind of essentially, my story was that there was no resources or information around for bigger bodied folks in skating when I wanted to return to it during the 2020 pandemic. And I had been a fat skater my whole life, in high school and middle school, stopped skating like most of us do when we started driving, and unfortunately didn't go back to it for over a decade. And I assumed there had been great advancements in this, in the board technology and all kinds
Right.
of things. Maybe there would be some cool, like, kind of groups online or websites or forums or best boards to buy for big bodies or anything, right? No, nothing. And I was so disappointed. And the only thing I did see was like fail compilations of people falling or like weight limits, like just immediately, like, if you Google like weight limits for skateboards that were smaller than I was. And so I was convinced then that if I were new to this, I would just be told right away that I couldn't do it. But because I had done it before at that size, I knew all of this information was just bogus. So I had to kind of create something that was going to, at least counter that when someone like myself looked online.
Yeah. So what if any adaptations do you make for skaters of plus size? And by the way, what is the term? What term do you prefer?
It's a good question. So there's so many different terminology. We use quite a few because everybody kind of feels differently about them. I talked a little bit about this with Joe too. So like as a fat person, I'm comfortable saying fat. I think for other folks, it some people prefer plus size. For folks that are just referring to us, you could just say larger body or something like that, heavier bodies, especially if we're talking about skateboards where it's really about the weight.
Yeah.
If this were muscle or fat, the way that I get wheel bite would be the same. So so yeah.
I sort of
uh,
look at it like anybody who wants to skate and wants help skating, I'm going to help them. And then they're just a skater. And
yeah,
I'm not trying to minimize anyone's experience. I just go, okay, well, that person wants to skate. So let's figure out how to make it happen. And,
absolutely.
and I think that's maybe the approach you're taking to this.
100%. Well, the first thing that we tend to get is folks that are just fueled with doubt, right? And so um, I would say that our first sessions almost are just kind of like reassurance based. Like I think like
Yeah.
people are just like, no, I'm going to break the board, or like, no, I just can't, it's not going to support me, or any of these fears that people have. We're not going to roll, it's not going to go anywhere. And so once we kind of, whether that's through somebody else trying it or me showing or something, we kind of get to be that representation, that little like moment, and for people of like, oh, it is possible.
Hmm. Yeah. So back to that question.
Yeah, so some
Are
of
the
that,
skateboards different? Are you getting custom skateboards? Are you just skating on skateboards?
just skating on skateboards.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the only main kind of differences that we find that we have to do to kind of tweak or tune a skateboard is occasionally swapping out bushings. And that's pretty common. A lot of the bushings, like whenever I get a pair of independent trucks, for example, I can never work on their standard like orange bushings. I always have to take them out, switch them into Bones Hards, and it's a $10 exchange and immediately supports my body mass. And so little things like that, like just kind of are night and day for somebody.
You may laugh about this, but I like to skate harder bushings too because I'm scared of wheel bite.
Oh yeah, that's
And I,
great.
I weigh in like between 190 and 200, but still for me, like I sometimes I don't know, I like the stability and I know I should be at a point where I can skate a loose truck and just go for it, but I still just like I like a stiffer bushing and set a little bit looser. So it feels better. For whatever reason, it just feels better to me.
Yeah.
Hey, Andy, I have a question. When you have somebody new come up, you just talked about what was it, reassurance in the beginning. So, what's the process look like when you get a new skater coming, or a new person who's never skateboarded coming to one of your groups, a big person?
So generally, I like to kind of talk them through the process of like, okay, like let's find a board that you're interested in. I like to have a lot of different types of boards available. For some people, the size of a long board feels more comfortable. Like for some reason, it's like, oh, there's
Mm.
more board, more me. That might be great. Or for just like stance wise as well, like just the wheelbase. For other people, sometimes longboards feel a little bit too flexible or a little bit too, you know, um, kind of there's a little bit more give in it. So they want something a little bit different. We get a standard. Nonetheless, I think it's really important, and it was a goal of Chub Rules to have lots of different boards so that we can have people try them out and figure out what felt the best under their feet. Because I think that the biggest thing was that none of these folks had boards. None of these folks felt safe enough going to a shop and buying boards or asking questions. So I wanted to kind of be their store experience as well, right? Like
Mhm.
once we find something that felt like comfortable, like, and that that feeling when you find like the right size deck or whatever, and you're just like, this feels good, you know, then we figure out where their comfort level is. And for some of them, it's never leaving the grass that day.
Yeah.
Like we start the entire day just on getting on and off the board, maybe like standing on one foot and seeing how long they can do that, like different kind of things that make them feel comfortable. If they want to try a kick turn in the grass, cool. Like we've made some real strong, progress. But and then maybe we go from there to, trying it on harder ground.
Yeah. What's so in terms of adaptations, and body mobility, how are you approaching body mobility? Are you recognizing a limitation in mobility, or is there no limitation in mobility? Does it vary? Like, what are your experiences?
So, each person will have their own kind of areas of strengths and weaknesses, whether that's like quite literally with their muscles or what have you. So for example, my co-founder or co-organizer, they have some knee injuries, previous knee injuries that has kind of plagued them for a long time. And so things like balancing on that leg were going to be a stronger challenge. And so for our sessions together, we worked on stance and pushing for months
Yeah.
before they were able to um, push and get their foot back onto the board after a stride. And now they're able to push, and kind of go across the park, and it's been really wonderful to see. But I think that even that for some people, we understand, we see the videos, oh, it may take months to learn how to ollie, or it may take months to learn how to kickflip, but nothing says it may take months to learn how to push, and
It's
so
like the thing everybody overlooks it. Honestly, I sort of wish that all beginners would take a slower approach to pushing.
yeah,
Because if you learn how to balance on one foot and roll, then you have the freedom to move that back foot into position and feel comfortable. And everybody tries to get to that two-footed stance so quickly. And that's
yes,
where I think most of the danger lies for a beginner. It's in
yeah,
that transition from push to plant, planting the foot on the board.
100%.
And so
So
I totally
summarize,
appreciate that
you
approach.
start people out on grass. You start them slow, let them feel comfortable. Don't push them. Oh, first they find a good board. Then they get comfortable, they find a comfortable board, then they
Hmm.
get a comfortable, safe space, like on a non-rolling surface, and they
Hmm.
just get comfortable. And you said it takes some people weeks or months before they're comfortable rolling on a hard surface, huh?
Absolutely, yeah. And in those situations, like, we just kind of work on different things to keep it exciting and fun and motivating. So, in Jen's example, um, you know, um, because months or going by where pushing feels complicated, that can be really frustrating, right? You can go like, you could feel like, God, I want to just give this up. It's not happening. And so, we would integrate that with things like, okay, cool, there's this little tiny hill that like on the sidewalk that will roll into a nice smooth grass patch. And so like, let's practice just no pushing, standing on the board and rolling down the hill into the grass patch to see if you feel like you've gained any more balance, and stability and comfort on the board in the last few weeks of, this. And suddenly like that clicked, right? Like, oh, like I'm moving, I feel the wind blowing, I'm rolling, I can picture myself skating. And so, all of these ways to still kind of make that feel very connective as we're,
Mm.
kind of gaining progress.
And
Andy, we are working with a number of school districts to develop programming for PE classes. And the teachers are telling us, school administrators are telling us a typical number of people who are actually technically obese is about 50% in K through 12. And as professional educators, they're being measured
Mhm.
and they have outcomes that they need to get. They have improvements in physical ability, improvements in attitude or feelings of emotional well-being. They're being measured on kids' grades,
Mhm.
on referrals to the office.
right.
Mhm.
You've been doing this for a couple of years. What kind of outcomes have you seen that these people will be able to expect in their programs?
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, first of all, confidence, just immediately skyrockets when people are skating. So that's an amazing kind of feeling. There's a lot of um, kind of um, body awareness that I think comes into play that is ideal for people that are, I teach middle school, and so when I am working with younger people, I think sometimes they're not really fully aware of their body, right? Like there's not a
Yeah.
lot of cognitive, so suddenly like, all of the kind of micro movements that we have to do in skating, all of this kind of like postural like stuff, like it's kind of a great time to be really kind of connective to your body, but also just things that you would gain, balance. My balance has increased quite a bit. I love balance boarding on rainy days, and people, are like, "Wow, how are you doing that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's easy to me because skating came natural and it's very similar." Um, my co-organizer, her knee has gotten tremendously better. And so for folks that have like any type of injury that they're trying to like kind of recover from, like, this is also really kind of great for just like, again, like doing types of strength training, muscle training, balance training, core training, a lot of core strength in skateboarding
I want to
as
I want
So
to
those are
ask you.
physical outcomes. There's confidence.
well.
Are you teaching skateboarding in the middle school?
Yeah, I teach sex ed. It's a little different. But I with the but I have taught obviously grade schoolers and middle schoolers skateboarding before. So some of the things that comes with that confidence, artistic expression. I don't think a lot of people realize how artistic skateboarding really is, a way to express creativity. This can be really great for folks that are like kind of into more solo things too, where they don't want a coach or a goal or an opponent or points or things like that. Like that kind of sport doesn't apply to them, that doesn't interest them. They just want an opportunity to be creative. Skateboarding, things like freestyle, for example, like is really amazing for that. Like there's just so much. Um, we have a number of folks in our group who are neurodiverse, and so like that's really great for folks that are on the autism spectrum, or folks that have ADHD. Like they've found that like skating has been really great for them, again, and this kind of connective to their body and mentally. So it's just been really wonderful to see all the different ways in which people have found some value from the activity.
Andy, question, I want to lean into, you were talking about the emotion and sort of the culturally supportive piece of this puzzle, like how people become connected to a group and feel that, if we go back to Maslow's, that need for belonging, that sense of belonging. How do you manage three things? Okay, one, fear in general, just fear of failure, fear of all the things that come along with trying something like skateboarding. How do you manage the reaction to pain so that there's survival beyond the first pain, right? Because the first pain makes a lot of people quit, right? And then how do you develop that culture of acceptance so that people feel like they belong to something special through skates? Those three questions are burning in the back of my mind as you've been talking. I just want to see where you go with that, how you create that opportunity.
That's awesome. No, I love that. Thank you. Okay, so fear is super real. I think one of the greatest things about coming into, for myself, coming into teaching other fat folks skating, is that I get to also, it's that 90s plug of like, I'm not only the president, I'm also a client, kind of thing.
That's pretty good.
I don't know if that dates myself, but yeah. It's but
it's totally good though.
Yeah, but it really does kind of help that I can also, express that level of I get it. Like I'm also afraid of that too, or I also have similar fears of this. That really helps to create that. I think everybody can do that, but I have this kind of way of doing it, just by representing and being there. Whereas I think I've watched your videos, you do that through just kind of referring to when you were younger or when you first started, or, experiences that we have that kind of help us to not seem like we don't understand the fear, right? Like to put us in their place and say, hey, we can relate, we can empathize with that. I think that really directly ties into the second one too. I think normalizing and talking about some of the risks, some of the injuries, some of the possibilities that are inevitable, also really help. So for example, in my group, people are afraid of falling and embarrassing themselves, or like kind of, like I'm afraid I'm going to fall and break the board, or people are going to laugh at me, or things like that. And so I get to kind of normalize that with like, all skaters fall, like it's okay. Yeah, that's the rite of passage. It's part of skating. Like, oh, first skate injury, like all of the kind of things that make it less about failure, and more about the process. We also, of course, really strongly encourage pads and helmets, and teach, proper ways to fall, so that, much like your videos, so that the risk is limited, and things like looking at grass and whatnot. So we try to kind of minimize the risk, but talking about it, owning it, I think is an important part of it.
And when they fall and do take that first hit, right?
Yeah.
That might turn people away. How are you remaining successful at keeping them engaged in skateboarding past that? I call it the pain reaction, because it's like a chain reaction, right? Once it happens, they're like, the next step is, I can't do this, I hate this, I suck, and I'm out of here, right? And they move on to the next thing, or nothing. They feel like a failure. I always tell people it's okay to fail, but we want to make sure that people don't leave feeling like a failure, right?
Yeah.
How do you get past that?
So this is really kind of ties into your third question. I think this is where the community aspect of it really comes into play. When we have somebody that falls, I mean, obviously we don't crowd them, like in a way like that's going to make them feel on the spot. But, there is a kind of large wave of support and recognition, as opposed to any type of judgment or, this feeling of, I hope no one notices I'm going to hide in the corner, and just like lick my wounds, right? Like an injured cat or something. Like, no, like we, I'm there with the ice packs or with whatever, somebody else will come up and be like, oh yeah, I saw that. Like, you had that right before the slip, or, like,
Yeah, right.
yeah, any kind of whatever that like kind of let them know they were like on the right track, or, or, oh, same thing happened to me first day. Like, these are the points in which we can really connect to somebody who's feeling fragile, maybe emotionally, about whether or not this is going to work for them, to like really kind of say like, no, you're on the right track. This is actually part of the steps, and you're gonna be okay. How's your injury, by the way? Good. Okay, cool. Then you're fine.
Yeah, so you mitigate it first by slowing down the progression, as you
Yeah.
talked about before. That's a great first step, is mitigate it. I always like to warn people and go, hey, when you do fall, this might be the experience, but we're gonna have some successes before we fall, right?
Yeah.
And then after they fall, it's like, yeah, you're on the right track. You can do this. You've had some success. This is part of your process, and it's an opportunity for you to overcome it. I think I love that. I love that that's how skaters develop grit. All right. So how do you build, just in general? Because there's, as you pointed out, there are videos out there all the time of somebody who's overweight, steps on a skateboard, and then stumbles and slams into a car, or tries to drop into a mini ramp. I don't know why their friend would take them to the mini ramp first, but
Right.
they go to the mini ramp and they slam. And it's a lot of times, not always, but it's a lot of times, it's somebody filming their friend who's overweight, and
Yeah.
it becomes a joke. And
Right.
culturally, I think that sucks.
Yeah.
I don't appreciate those things as probably as much as other people do, but I understand it and I accept the humanity of it all. How do you move past that?
So I think that, the challenge for, because, you know, I'm an American, millennial. I've watched my share of ridiculousness or whatever,
Yes,
like,
of course.
but also like, there are always the episodes that, where something feels a little too like, shouldn't be making fun of that, right? Like whether
Yeah.
it's like, somebody's like mental illness, or somebody's like, being impoverished or something, and I'm like, that's not funny. And so like that happens, right? And it sucks. But I think what people don't understand, the kind of ripple effect of that, is that it also then turns to um watching somebody like myself or one of my members skating as almost like an inherent like kind of trigger for, oh, this is about to be funny, and like bust out your phone, and like something, and it's like it's the punchline is about to happen. And that really is the unfortunate part, that ends up kind of hitting our community, is that like most of our folks are afraid to skate in public because there's kind of this cultural like expectation that they're going to do something embarrassing. And so what I, really kind of how I mitigate that is, again, with the kind of reiteration of like, all skaters fall, like that's just like people being rotten, like, out there trying to film people and whatever. But that what we're also doing is, every time I'm out there skating, somebody, whether it's somebody of my size or somebody who just is a smaller person who's never seen somebody my size skating, is going, oh wow, I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah.
Like, like there's also this like eye-opening moment too, right? Like, and so like it's like visibility is like is a dangerous thing, because it's like it puts you out to be potentially harmed, but it also gives you the opportunity to be potentially seen, and seen by people who need to see somebody like you. So it's a hard thing to hold, but I think it's an important one to hold.
Well, I want to share a couple things with you, and then we're going to open it up to some questions. And obviously, I want your response to what I'm about to share with you. But two things. One, I grew up overweight my entire childhood. I was chubby kid. I mean, it was a struggle for me to learn how, I got into the snow sports pretty heavily. It was a huge struggle for me to learn how to ski when my dad first took us up there. And we were also, not a wealthy family. So it was like one big chance and I didn't do well. You know, my dad was amazing. You know, he spent literally 9 hours getting me to a point where I could slide a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, and didn't fall getting off the chair anymore and get laughed at, which is the reality. I mean, I felt like I was a spectacle every time I'd block the way getting off that beginner chairlift. It was an awful experience for most of the day. But his commitment to sticking with me made me feel okay. And I was thinking about that because really became prominent, that story of my childhood, because I read an article yesterday about a young man who, 13 years old, overweight, struggling with it, being bullied and humiliated every single day in school, came home, made a video, and took his own life. And thinking about that, because I have a child, his age, and school is so hard. Public school is so hard. The world is very hard on things that they don't appreciate or don't understand. And I wonder if you wouldn't be willing to talk a little bit about what that feels like, how you overcome it as an individual, and how skateboarding has helped you to have that sense of empowerment. Because what you're doing for other people, I mean, I think that's where it's at. I think that's how you overcome these things, is by leaning into others. But I want to hear your perspective on that, because I relate very much, to the way that people treat, others, because I've been there, and I've perpetrated it, as in my weaker moments as a human being.
Sure, absolutely. Um, well, thank you for sharing all of that, by the way. And I definitely, I've gotten to hear a little bit about that story before from you, um, in working with you in the past, but it's really just kind of always powerful to hear again. Um, one of the challenges for me in starting Chub Rolls has been that, much like with the visibility conversation we just had, we became quite popular really fast. Our first event I had no idea how many people were going to show, what the crowd was going to look like. CNN was there to film it because, we had already generated so much kind of, interest before, just as a concept,
Yeah.
which was really interesting, and terrifying for me at the same time. But what it also meant was that, within the first year of starting Chub Rules, I was exposed to a lot of public hate and criticism. Like, at pretty much any of the news videos, when they're posted, you go in the comments and there's, like, all kinds of horrible things being said about myself, my members, our bodies, or what have you. And it sucks, and so, it got to the point where I almost wanted to turn away news interviews, because I was just like, I don't want to keep putting us, up for this, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want my members to feel like they're going to be criticized. And at the same time, each time one of these would go out, I would get like a bunch of emails or DMs from somebody saying, hey, like, I saw this playing in the, on the news when I was at the beauty salon or whatever, and I started crying in the shop. Like, this was just so moving. I had a similar story, or I, just connected to this for whatever reason, or I just didn't even know this was possible for someone my size. And so, really what kind of carries me through is that, right? It's the impact that, that I see is being made, and the folks that are being negative are really just reiterating why this is so important. So it's like, no matter what comments we're getting, all the comments are telling us this was important, right? Like,
Yeah.
whether it's the negative stuff that hurts, or the, like, thank you, this was so valuable. They're both just really, fuel the fire, I guess.
So
I
Andy, how do you deal with the criticism? That's a big thing. My kids talk about toxic environment on social media, and you are a high profile target. How do you deal with it emotionally, personally?
I try to find my support networks, where they are. I lean on other people that like have similar experiences. So, my co-organizer and I are very close. So whenever something is said about, our group or one of us, like we come together and, kind of, hey, like I saw what they said, how you doing? Like, I blocked the comment, I blah blah blah. Do you need any support today? Like, can I take you to lunch? Like, we really try to like kind of I think that when you are a used to being a target in some way, which for me, whether it's being bad or whether it's my being queer or trans or any of these other things, right? I'm very used to being a target in some way for criticism, and so I think that we just kind of find our crew and we just kind of are like, hey, it was one of those days, and the people are like, oof, yeah, and we kind of hold each other, which is unfortunate that we have that in a frequency, but like it also that's just kind of how you get through it. I would encourage people that don't have that to find that. That's life changing, honestly.
So one last question before we start taking questions from the audience. Chris and I both have teenage kids, and it's a tough time. What advice would you give to them when they're bullied for whatever reason?
I would say, that the things that make you who you are, that make you like unique and special who you are so valuable. And you don't really get it right now. And it's, like because everybody else around you is like being really like, like wants to conform, wants to fit in. There's a sense of normalcy. But when you are outside of those walls, whether that be like school or being a minor or what have you, and you're around people that really get you, like that really like see who you are and what you're about, they're gonna want all of that. They're gonna value that. They're gonna celebrate that. They're gonna love that. And I think about some of the folks, that I talk about this a lot when I'm having conversations about like gender and things like that, where if we think about somebody like Prince or David Bowie and like how amazing they are, like visually and style wise, right? And what if like they listened to somebody one day that told them like, you got to stop dressing like that, you got to stop, like you gotta stop like acting like that, you need to butch it up. What a loss that would have been to all of us as a humanity, right? And so like, why would we let somebody tell us that we need to stop doing that when we feel it's so true? Like, just be that, just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard to recognize that on all sides of this, there's just humanity, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to remember that sometimes and see through it. And I was thinking yesterday, that young man, he plays baseball. How amazing would it have been if he had also had a community of skateboarders that had his back,
Yeah.
so he didn't feel alone. This is a good baseball player. Like he
Yeah.
had a thing, he had something, but
Yeah.
the world, I think, tries to take those things from us and
Yeah.
to make us feel like we're not good enough or not gonna or capable enough. And I love what you just said. Imagine I'm having a hard time imagining the world without that young man. So
Yeah.
and I think that was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing this. And Joe, were there any questions? Does anybody have questions for Andy right now? Because we absolutely can open it up to anybody listening that would like.
We haven't had anything come up. We covered a lot of ground here,
I
and
see a
there's
few
some
things in the
nice comments.
chat. Oh, that's mostly just y'all.
Yeah. It's
Riser pads, yeah.
Do you guys
Yeah.
do you do riser pads? Is that a
I
thing?
do, yeah. So a lot of the folks, I like to start them out on a slightly bigger wheel, like 55 and up generally. It just kind of goes over cracks a little better. There is a little bit more weight to kind of, get stuck in a crack or things like that. So if we try to, when they're first starting out, a little bigger wheel helps. And so because of that, I try to go for a riser pad. Um, you know, check out if they if they work with the standard bushing. If not, then we switch out to harder. You don't want to cut into your soft bushings by tightening it too much.
So quick question for anyone starting skating that is bigger: higher durometer wheel, lower durometer, softer or harder wheel?
I love both, honestly.
You like both, so it doesn't matter. So
Yeah,
it doesn't have a major impact.
I think that, I think people should know the difference, and I think people should know the terrain makes a huge difference. And so, when I'm skating in a real smooth parking lot or at a skate park, I generally would like a harder wheel. But when I'm just cruising around the neighborhood, soft wheels all day.
One question just came up. Do you recommend having your first meetups at a skate park or somewhere else?
I would recommend somewhere else. Skate parks can be a little intimidating, and depending on the park, they may not have a lot of flat ground area for practice. I know several skate parks in my area that are almost entirely transition invert, and so that would be a little much to start new skaters on. Some of our first sessions have been in parking lots, or just basketball courts when they were empty. And that works really well, especially if it's got things like curbs and stuff that you can do little kind of curb tricks on.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of tennis courts and basketball courts. Those are great spots.
Painted ground. Yeah, it's real smooth.
Nobody plays tennis anymore anyways. I'm just kidding. Does a wider width board matter? Last question.
No. So for comfort and stability, of course, but you can ride anything. I did some of my first shove-its and ollies on a 775. It's not exactly what I would love to cruise around the neighborhood on. I ride a 8.5 to a 9.5 cruiser, depending on the day. So yeah, but you can ride anything. I've got a little Lanyards dinghy that's 8 inches. I like riding sometimes. So
awesome. Andy, thank you so much. This was thank you for allowing me to share some stuff too, and responding so beautifully or eloquently to it. Just the information you shared, your message, what you're doing for people is absolutely inspiring. I think this is how you turn skateboarding into something more than skateboarding.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's been an honor to, have your guys' support. So thank you so much for, backing Chub Rolls.
Always. And if you need anything, or any of your members want to utilize any of the tools that we have, let us know and we'll set it up for you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Well, that was really interesting. And our next guest is also really interesting. Tracy Guerra-Richaud. I just asked her how to pronounce the name. We've been friends for a long time, and I always call her Tracy. Tracy, can you do the honors with your name, please?
My last name is Guerra-Richaud.
Guerra-Richaud.
Thank you.
Guerra with a ricochet.
Got it. I just brought Tracy on.
So I need to brag about you a bit. I need to brag a bit about you. Tracy is the poster child for this event. She is the front page, and she's gotten a lot of views on our website and on all of our social media. And people have saying that's got to be fake. They can't believe that somebody in a wheelchair at her age. You can go ahead. Can we tell people your age, Tracy?
Yeah, I'm almost 63. I'm kind of
60. Whoa, you're blowing my mind right now.
And she's riding vert in pools that Tony Hawk rides in. I mean, look at that. So yeah. So she's an extraordinary individual that is really blazing pathways for just to show people of all abilities can get on a skateboard and have a good time.
Yeah, and you know what, Tracy, Joe taught me a new term yesterday, because I was asking, like, what do you call skate, being in the skate park on a wheelchair? And You had a term, and maybe you could share it because I thought it was so cool. You just took the MX, right? And
Yeah, it's actually called WCMX, wheelchair motocross. And the sport was actually invented by a guy named Aaron Fotheringham, and he's the guy you see doing Nitro Circus.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it started out when he was a young boy. His brothers would go to a skate park, and they were on their bikes, and he would just go and just trash his wheelchairs. So yeah, that's how it all began. And he's a complete rock star to me. And
he's.
also he's a very good friend.
I've seen him perform and seen him do things that I don't care what ability you have, probably
Yeah.
should be intimidating to anyone. So
He's a really good guy.
I'm loving your wall.
I owe him a lot. I mean, it's kind of, this sport to me has been incredibly life-changing, and I see it also changing lives.
Mm.
So it's been pretty phenomenal. It's been a great ride.
Can I ask you a question about the wall behind you really quick?
Yes.
Up by the door, I swear I'm looking at a fin for a surfboard. Is that what that is?
Yeah, that's actually an award. That's
Okay.
yeah, that's an award. It's a fin for a surfboard, and right next to it, can you see what's next to it?
Yeah, the wheelchair, like a wheelchair.
It's Aaron. It's an Aaron toy. It's Mattel made an action the things that you do with your hands. RC.
Yeah.
It's an RC.
Oh, no way.
Okay, but what you'll see right above, do you see that skateboard up
Yeah,
there?
I see it. I see
It's
it.
a lady. It's a lady on a wheelchair, and Shreddy gave that to me.
No way. Are you talking about
Yeah.
Freddie
Yeah,
Mercury?
has been
Yeah, he's
one
here
of my-
today too.
Shreddy, yeah, I know, I see.
Oh, that's
He's
so
been one of my
sick.
biggest supporters. Yeah, Shreddy's pretty awesome.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. We like
Yeah.
that guy.
I love Shreddy.
That's awesome. So maybe you could tell people a little bit about WCMX
WCMX.
and how you got into it, and maybe we can get into some of that.
The way I got into it is, well, first of all, how I got my first wheelchair was I was diagnosed with MS. Now, it's something that probably started in my body as a kid, and diagnosis didn't come until later on. So the beauty of my life is I've gotten to experience both worlds. So what I really want people to know is that when you see a wheelchair, it's not just somebody with a wheelchair. There could be other things going on here. So people expect me to be completely paralyzed. That's really not the case.
Okay.
It's kind of, I can stand up. Gratefully so. It's painful. I do it. And so you may see me in a skate park standing up and pulling myself up. Generally, I use my toes. It's the only part of my shoe that wears out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I kind of want to tell people about what disability is is considered. In the United States, there are 39 million Americans who have a physical disability. So basically that's 1 in 7. So all of you that are teachers, you guys have a huge, huge job to do, because the obesity rate for somebody in a wheelchair is quite high. We can also go back to my childhood, and I call myself a pre-Title IX athlete. I was 12. It's been what, 50 years? I am doing the same struggle right now with my wheelchair as an athlete, as a pre-Title IX child. So we need to get people in wheelchairs out and doing sports and being counted, which is what I want to do right now.
Tracy, I think it would behoove us to introduce what is Title IX.
Okay, for those of you who don't know, Title IX was something that came about when people realized that girls and women were not getting the same sporting opportunities as men. There were no soccer games. There were no baseball games. I was allowed to play t-ball with a softball as a child. Unfortunately, when I graduated high school, things were still not equal. There were still very few opportunities besides cheerleading or what is the one where they march around with the flags? Girl team. There still were, or I could be in tennis, maybe a few opportunities in track, but they wanted to be equal, the money going to equal sports. So girls could actually have teams and play sports. So for me, all these changes have come about, you get to see all these women playing soccer, especially in Los Angeles. We've got a really fabulous team. They've got a stadium. I mean, it's really incredible to see. But now, it's time for the disabled community to come out and see themselves as the star athletes they are, with the same prize purses, it's kind of, we need to have some sort of Title IX action for parasports, and also we need to see people in chairs in advertisements. It's like the whole thing coming around. It's kind of, for me, it's like, let's go. So for me, competition is fine, but sports are better. And for me, just getting out there, I don't really, competition is fine. It's not really my thing, but I'll do it. I'll do it over and over again.
Yeah.
Just to be out there. Yeah.
So if you could have exactly what you wanted, that the level of participation where you want it to be, what does it look like for skateboarding and for WCMX?
What it would first, it would take getting the equipment out there that the kids need. For those also that don't know, a kid with a wheelchair that an insurance company provides, that wheelchair would just fall apart. We have to start with getting basic equipment for kids. And that just comes to people spreading the word that there are organizations out there like Challenged Athlete Foundation that can help you get this equipment. Kids need good chairs as children. They need to go out and play, because we all know that when you're a child and you play, you are learning. I had a fabulous opportunity. I just came back from New York, and with a couple other adaptive athletes or WCMX, we taught children, and it was, these kids are starved to go play, and they just went for it. They had the most amazing crashes, and they all wanted to fall eventually, and they rode rails. Yeah, it's kind of, for the first time, we were trading around chairs and stuff so they could do it. And it's kind of, these kids are starved for this stuff. And even for me, if people were to go and teach these kids how to do a wheelie in their chairs, because that is the way to get around the planet. Sometimes when you teach somebody a WCMX skill or even a skateboarding skill, that enables that child or an adult to get around the planet, to get up and down a curb, because people stand in curb cuts. It's like, okay, so now I'm getting off subject. I know. I knew this was going to happen. I knew.
It's fun to listen. It's fun to listen to how your mind works.
I know, right? It's like, because, a lot of WCMX, it's just a life skill. The people stand in curb cuts. I mean, how beautiful is it to just, boom, go off a curb and just, yeah. Yeah, I'm old.
Yeah. Okay, don't be ageist. All right, you're not old.
I know,
but
I'm allowed, because I'm that old person. Funny story from this weekend is one of these little girls said to me, "You're old. How come you're not dead yet?"
Oh man,
it's cute. It's cute, and I said, because I'm happy. you know,
Yeah.
I'm happy. Like, yeah, it's
So
all good.
let me ask you, in your career as an athlete, how much coaching have you received? Have you been coached a lot?
No,
So
no.
this is a pursuit you've taken on your own.
It's pretty much the really no coaching.
Mhm.
I've had advice. So people will tell you things. Um, and it depends on who tells you, which brings me to the difference between men and, male and female coaches.
Mm.
Um, so I was with kind of a group, and they were men, and they say, hey, you just do this and you do this. Women will
Like
say,
magic, it's just gonna happen.
it's kind of like the different, when you give your wife instructions, you don't say go north or go south. You say, turn right at the McDonald's, and it's kind of, for me, it was just about having someone stand there with me. Because an able-bodied person standing there to pick me up or just for self-assurance was fabulous. I actually ended up paying somebody to stand there when I dropped in on something large.
Wow.
So it was just for self-assurance. There's nothing they could have taught me. I taught them how to teach me.
That is beautiful. I say this all the time, that good coaches have lots of answers, but great coaches find their answers through their students.
Yeah. So I taught this guy how to teach me. I just needed someone to stand there and be positive. He did that.
Yeah.
And now he is coaching a kid that I coach.
That is so cool. So
at the events,
if you were recommending to someone who wanted to be there for you or be there for an athlete in a wheelchair, how should they go about learning from you? What does that look like?
If they're in Los Angeles, I would take them out, put them in my chair. I don't know if Shreddy's tried my chair, but I am more than happy to do that for anybody. It's
so living it,
huh?
They have to experience it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's the best way to do it. You cannot do it in a hospital chair. The anatomy of a skate chair is quite different. If you want to see it, I just happen to have her right here.
Yeah, definitely.
Would you like to see it? Okay.
Yeah, so, please. You can show us. That'd be awesome.
All right. Okay. So this is, her name is Pi. Pi Box. This is a box wheelchair. Can you see it?
Yeah, and Pi like as in the number 3.14159?
No, Pi because the guy who made it likes pie.
Okay. See, now you know I'm a nerd. So
I know, right? You know what?
Tracy, who made this chair?
A guy named Mike Box. Now, I'm not, he makes really good chairs. Skate chairs are made by different people. They all do it differently. They're all good.
Yeah.
They're all good.
Why is the back so low for your skate chair?
Okay.
You gotta explain this. I gotta understand this.
So the reason it's low is so you can turn.
Oh, right. Because you need that rotation.
Yeah, you need that rotation. If your body can't do that, then then you can't have a higher back. You're just gonna not be able to do the skills where you can lean back.
Yeah, pumping, right?
Oh yeah. So
like working through a transition. Let me ask you this question, specific question. You're pumping through a transition. As you go up the transition, do you lean away or do you lean in?
You lean forward. You lean forward going up a transition.
And then when you're coming down transition, you stay forward or you lean back?
Okay, so if you're doing vert,
yeah.
Okay, so if you're coming down a vert wall,
right?
You are basically as far back as you possibly can.
No way. So that's totally counterintuitive because we're teaching, upright skaters to drop in and lean forward.
You probably won't be teaching too many people vert.
Yeah,
because it's like for me, that's the definition of stupid.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the definition of stupid. Okay, so let's go back to these wheels here. Okay, so
Okay.
the wheels on a proper skate chair, these are made by Spinergy. These spokes here are carbon fiber.
Okay.
They're very light.
Super light. Yeah.
Yeah, these tires are air.
How much does that chair weigh?
Maybe 25 pounds.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's because, so if you look at my tires, my hands don't close all the way. I don't have a good grip.
Okay.
So these tires here, there is rubber on them. So I wear rubber gloves and I basically run the chair from here.
Ah, okay. Okay.
So I sit, when you see me in a wheelie before I drop in, basically I'm holding on from here.
Okay.
Right. So, I'm basically like this. All right. So the other part of this chair, let's do this here. All right. So you'll notice that this chair is also tapered.
Okay.
And this is a little longer because for me, since I don't have any balance in my normal life, this prevents me a lot of times from tipping forward and falling on my face.
Okay. Okay.
That feature was done just for me.
So it's kind of it's like an outrigger. So giving you 4F stability.
Well, they're all done. They're all custom made. So
Okay.
that feature, because of, the way my brain is structured, normally the chair would stop at your right here. But
Okay.
mine's a little extra long.
Okay.
So let's go down to the casters. All right, so the casters here. Now this should be good for anybody with a chair. These casters here, can
Yeah.
you see these? Okay, so in the casters, there's a spring. So that makes these things bounce. Okay. Sorry, Luso. That makes these bounce.
That is really cool. It's kind of like having a hinge joint, a loaded hinge joint.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That is cool.
They're also on my everyday chair.
Okay.
Luso.
But that's not standard on a wheelchair, right? Like a standard wheelchair isn't going to have
No,
that.
but it should be. It should
Okay.
be because that means, you guys hit something in a park.
Yeah.
And you guys are gone. I can go over that same thing unless it sticks to my wheel, which
Yep.
it has. And that's trouble. You guys go down and I can wipe out too.
Okay.
Same situation. So you'll also notice on this chair, I have shocks. My everyday chair has shocks too, because that's who I am. And these enable me not only to do vert, but to do a higher walls in transition. Also helps me even out, so that picture that you saw.
Yeah.
If I didn't have these shocks, I probably wouldn't be doing that.
So do the shocks, I mean, I'm assuming they also absorb impact to protect your spine, right?
Oh yeah. Okay. Not that I would feel it.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of loss of feeling in my body, which is, good or bad. I don't know. And of course, my grind bar. Oh,
That is awesome.
I love my little grind bar. Yeah.
So
The other feature that you should know about when teaching somebody with a physical disability with a wheelchair, you'll notice right here, mine's a little worn out, is feet and legs. Best to be strapped in, strapped back, because legs tend to fly. And yeah, mine tend to kick. And spasm and do all sorts of fabulous things. Also on this chair is a four-link setup. I forgot what it's called, whatever. The other thing, always make sure that the person in the wheelchair has a seatbelt. That did not happen this weekend. Somebody flew.
so literally ejected out of the chair.
Oh yeah. She was really good sport about it. She was using her own chair, but yeah, no seatbelt.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is, and so tell me a little bit really quick. I know Joe has some questions about your group, but tell me really quick. I asked Andy a similar question, but you eject out of the chair like that and you're hitting concrete. How do you overcome the fear of the repeat?
You know, a lot of people in chairs,
Mm-hmm.
and even the newbies, they don't mind falling. I love to fall because it's almost a luxury. I fell this weekend and I have the most fabulous bruise on my hip along with the cut. And it's kind of like, you know, I was wearing protective equipment, but there was, you know, and it's fine. And what happens when you fall in public is people go, and you're just like, you know, and everyone, you know, they rush to help you. My friends don't rush to help me. That's the beauty of having friends. And it's kind of, yeah, you know, old lady in the wheelchair fell, but it's kind of, you know, it's like I was skating street with a friend and I get home and I tell my husband, yeah, I got this great swell boat. And he looks at me and he goes, first, were you wearing a helmet? Oh, no helmet. He goes, what about the elbow pads? And he's just mad about the helmet.
Wait. No helmet and you weren't wearing elbow pads?
Well, I was street skating. Actually, I started out, I was skating on my knees.
Yeah.
And then I got excited about this one thing. So it was
Got it. Okay, so note to all viewers, helmets, good idea.
Helmets and seatbelts. Yeah.
Helmets and seatbelts.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if they do have an everyday chair, which is to push around a skate park, you have to worry about with the kids. There's this thing called an anti-tipper. Where my grind bar is in my chair, they have these things for kids, and I think the physical therapists sell these to their parents.
Okay.
And they come out and they've got these rollers on them. Those tend to get stuck on things.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so I try to tell the parents, you know, and that these could be a little dangerous, and this is why. The kids think that they're a safety feature. That's fine, but eventually, you know, you just kind of, they're adjustable and you can adjust them up little by little. But yeah, they can be really dangerous. A kid can get hooked on it, and yeah, so we try to tell the parents that this is not a reliable safety.
If you remove those, then maybe the recommendation of like a spine protector and obviously a helmet to protect you from that backward slam.
No, that's just for everyday life.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, if you have a seatbelt, you're basically in a chair. What I highly recommend is that every kid knows how to do a wheelie and at least get up and down a curb, because that's a life skill, which is the beauty of WCMX, and learning those things is a basic life skill, along with, you know, getting the kid a reliable chair.
Do you recommend spine protection? Like, do you think that's something that a learning WCMX, you know, athlete would want to look into?
It depends on the person's disability.
Okay.
And that's kind of a personal choice.
Got it.
You know, as in any protective equipment for any person. Because for a lot of people, your mobility is limited anyway. You know, it's kind of like, you know, along with the MS, I have a spinal fusion in my neck. So I'm actually a little crooked in my neck anyway, you know, and my body is sideways.
Right.
So, you know, yeah. So there's a lot going into a person's body. Even able-bodied body is different.
Tracy, question about, we talked about this yesterday, you and I, when we were chatting, and we're trying to support educators who are working with people of all abilities, and your special space is people who are in wheelchairs.
Right.
Can you give them some guidelines on how to approach somebody, so that person, just what would you say to somebody who's going to be working with people in wheelchairs for the first time?
I actually have a list, because I told you I'd be more organized about this.
That's awesome.
I know, right? You know, I have my own personal issues with my wheelchair. But anytime you are working with somebody with any sort of disability, and I think this goes with any human, you know, people are human, and, you know, people with disabilities are even more human, because some of us are very sensitive because of things that have probably happened to us out in the real world, the real world. Because, you know, we get looks, we get stares, you know, we're, you know, like the man said in the last segment, you know, we're a curiosity. People do take videos of us. And for me, that's something I encourage. When I'm in Venice Skate Park, please take a video, go and share that video, because this is what we do. You know, I'm super proud. And, you know, honestly, I think he should be super proud too, because we're all human and we all have a special power. And his happens to be skateboarding with a different sort of body. My body is different too. My body uses wheels. We should be proud. You know, he's got an organization that shows he's proud. Let him take the video. It's all good. Okay, so back to this. Okay, so yeah, you know, just remember the humanity of the person in the chair, and the dignity. So, person with a disability, you talk to them. They may have somebody with them, a helper, a parent, a friend. We've all had that, you know, your kid and somebody's talking to your parent about you. You are the person that is being taught. Who else better to answer the question? Not mommy and daddy, unless the person is nonverbal, to which I say, you speak to that nonverbal person. And maybe me and daddy can answer that question, but it's always about dignity, because we still don't know how much that person is understanding. Maybe they're taking it all in and understand the commands and whatever, but for me, it's all about dignity. So yeah, that just goes to speaking with the personality. So yeah, you know, and just treat the people, if they're adults, treat them like adults. They're not children. I have been talked down to. Maybe it's because the brain disease component, I don't know, I never know, but I just kind of like, you know, like, just, it's dignity. If you're not sure how to treat somebody with a disability, ask them. There has never been a question that I haven't welcomed. If you have a question about how I move around the world or anything about my disability, I am so happy to answer it. You know, I've even been asked how I go to the bathroom. No question is off limits. Honestly, I don't care. So here's another good one. A person's mobility equipment, whether it's a wheelchair, a cane, a scooter, whatever, is their personal space. Do not touch it, do not move it, do not push them, unless you ask.
That's very
yeah, that's huge. Listen when somebody has difficulty talking, listen intently. Maybe somebody behind, you know, like I had this problem this weekend, especially with kids, because sometimes it's hard to understand them, but just listen as close as you can. You may have to have them repeat like a few times, but that's also important too. Sometimes people have trouble speaking, but it's all good. People with mental differences, same sort of thing. They have different ways of coping. One girl this weekend, you know, she had a different way of being happy. And so, you know, you just go along with the joy and wait until that, so you could move on, and it's all good. You just wait. Yeah, and we all know there are visible disabilities as well as the invisible disabilities. I have both. I am currently losing my vision. I don't know, it could be tomorrow, it could be 20 years from now. It's just spotty. So, you know, it's all good. You just, you know, I'm always happy to tell people. So if someone comes to a skate park and they cut me off, I just kind of have a little side conversation, say, you know, this is what's going on with me. I'm afraid I might hurt you. So it all works. And don't pretend to have a disability in front of somebody with a disability. Yeah. So instead of just
Tracy,
going,
I didn't understand that one about pretending.
yeah, some people will pretend that they're disabled. Right? Have you,
Yeah.
yeah. But
I don't know, right? Can you explain, can you explain that, please? That's news to me.
yeah, somebody will say, you know, I'm disabled too. I have blah, 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 you know, and it's kind of, they mean well. It's like, you know, they'll say ridiculous things like, I'm disabled too. I have, they make stuff up.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain, I guess, because it's so random that I can't even go there.
Is that,
Let's say I'm disabled too. I have a pimple on my bottom, on my big toe. It's stuff like that. It happens quite a bit.
anytime, so it's essentially just, you know, anytime someone is mocking, even with good intentions, trying to relate, but it
Right.
turns into mocking, you know, disabilities in general. My son struggles with that a lot. He has retinitis pigmentosa, so he's losing his vision, and it's very hard because a lot of people think he's faking, and they think there's nothing wrong with him right now because he still has some vision.
Right.
And so it's any type of mocking, any type of, I certainly think that, I do appreciate when people try to relate, but I think I love what you said earlier. Just ask questions. If you want to understand and you want to relate, just ask.
Yeah.
Just keep asking questions and listen to the answer.
Right. You know, the vision thing is really squirrely because, you know, it's just different. And it's, unless it's happening to you, it's very difficult to explain. It's kind of like, you know, I can't touch my finger to my nose anyway, but, you know, trying to like read something or, you know, it's kind of weird. So if somebody is skating like next to me or besides me, I really can't tell where they are. And if a bird flies over me,
Yeah.
it's like, I just lose it. I don't know where I am at that point. So, you know, ask if you could help them. Don't just go help. Like if I fall down, and I'm having trouble, the thing about falling down in a wheelchair is most of the time the seat belt gets hard to undo. So it takes a second or two. Don't just go rush to help somebody. Ask if they need help first. You know, people rush to help too often. Ask and expect a ton of questions. So, yeah.
So that was fantastic. If anybody wants that list, I put your Instagram address into the feed so everybody knows where it is, and then we can share that with anyone if you're watching this after we post. That's really useful. Tracy, another thing, let's say we've got we have a coach who is coming out of the adaptive world, not out of the skateboarding world. So they don't have the background that a lot of skateboard coaches have. How would they approach their first class with a group of kids and maybe adults in wheelchairs?
Ideally, they would have somebody who has done WCMX with them or have had experience with a wheelchair, because that probably wouldn't be optimal if they haven't had the experience. They would hopefully call someone in or have had experience. The thing to do first, you know, you've got to pretty much look at the age of the people you are teaching, I would think. And it's kind of the first thing I would teach anybody is their wheelie skill, because that is the basic skill you need to skate anyways. The way I do that is I use a wall, and I put the kids up against the wall and have them learn their wheelie that way. And I hold the chair until they can hold the wheelie up. And then I have them practice at home. So, you know, there's really no book. There's nothing that is going to train you to train a kid in a wheelchair how to skate WCMX. There's out there.
But we're working on that, and we've talked about that, and we are going to be adding that into our skateboard certification curriculum. We're expanding. We're adding adaptive component to the basic training right now, and we're going to work with people like you to really go deep and create hopefully a handbook for educators who want to help.
Yeah, basically you want them to land anything that they land, you want them to land on their back wheels with their front casters up.
Okay. All right. So the wheelie is incredibly important.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It really is. You want them to be able to balance. And it's like, I tell these kids it's the most important thing. And then when they learn that wheelie, I want them to go up and down the sidewalk in front of their house, and turn at the end and see how many times they can go back and forth. It's like, that's how important it is.
While holding the wheelie.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, there's another move I've seen WCMX people do, and that's the one-wheeled roll-in.
Yeah.
How do you balance on one wheel?
I don't know. I can only spin on one wheel. I cannot drop in on one wheel. I don't have the strength. It's so bizarre. I need momentum to do it. So, it's kind of, I have a trick that I do, and I haven't seen anyone else do it. So I'm kind of calling it my own trick. And I was told that I couldn't name it, but I have anyway. I it's kind of like, you come down backwards from something, and it's like I spin on 2, then I switch to 1, and then I do a layback. But it's kind of like I have never been able to just balance on one wheel, and like for the life of me. And I think it's because the arm that I need to pull up on is on my weak side. So it's like, I have one side that's, semi-useful, and one side that's just, I get so bad at it. And one side that's not so useful because, my body's it's not symmetrical in any way. And it just does not want to respond to that unless there's speed. I don't know.
What do you call the trick? Your secret name for the trick, since you can't name it.
I call it a ricochet.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And do you have video of that on your Insta?
It's probably somewhere, because it's just it's a component from something, because people come down, when you come down backwards from a wall, people tend to lose control. And I didn't like the look of it because, in my life, I was a gymnast. I wasn't very good because I never had balance in my life. But like things needed to look pretty. And so, I would come down from that and just do, turns, and then it turned into this other thing. And it how tricks go, they happen by accident.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Like skateboarding.
Right.
You do things by accident, and that's how that progressed. And then all of a sudden I added a layback to it because, hey, why not? So,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
That's pretty cool. Like I only just started to scratch the surface on some of your clips. So I'm looking for the ricochet now.
Yeah, well, a lot of times I just post me skating with my friends because that's kind of what I love the most.
Yeah.
So I know.
And when you skate with your friends, is it a mix of, upright skaters and wheelchair MX, or is it?
The thing is we are so spread out that it's hard to skate with them unless there's a competition or something. And Los Angeles traffic. So anytime I get to spend with, another person doing WCMX or something like that is pretty priceless, because a lot of my friends who use wheelchairs, they have jobs. Remember, I'm older and retired. So, there's that.
It's interesting, Joe and I talk all the time about skateboarding being for everyone, and there's not just one kind of skateboarding, it's not all street or core or anything like that. It's everything, all types of skateboarding. All people can be embraced in this experience. And hearing you talk about that, it makes me look at the way I approach spending time with people in the skate park even differently. I appreciate what you just said, man. It really makes me want to branch out and go, because I'm a apprehensive skater, and also like self-conscious about my skateboarding, like very nervous about it. And now, I mean, listening to Andy and now you is just totally.
Well, I don't think you should be self-conscious about it. You know, you need to come skate with me, because this is what I tell like all the kids or even the adults who come to Venice, because basically you're skating in a fishbowl, and people come and they sit there and they watch and they're videotaping and they're everything else. And some of the kids are embarrassed to skate. And it's like all the people out there watching, they're balloons. They're just balloons. You know, they're not here to look at you. You can forget about them. These people are balloons. And it's kind of the beauty of skating to me, well, pre-COVID skating, is that we're all there together. We're there to support each other. If you don't like me screaming for you and cheering you on, tough, because that's what I do. I am the happy person at the park.
Yeah.
There's some people who don't like that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to apologize for that anymore. It's kind of, that's what we're there for. We're there to support. We're there to even support we're there to help you on your first drop in. We're there to help you when you break your leg. I don't care how good or how not good you are. You know, it's just about there to be happy. You know, it's our place to go and relax, and basically it's pretty meditative.
Yeah, right. Yep. I think that's how a lot of people feel about skateboarding.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't care how you skate. You know, just go and choose happy and let's go.
Well, I think that is a really good way to wrap this talk with you, Tracy. It's beautiful. Just be happy, skate happy.
Yeah. Skate happy.
Before you go, do we have any questions in the chat? Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask Tracy before we go?
Nobody has any questions? Wow.
I'm sure they do. We just always spring it on them at the last second, and then they'll hit later. So
yeah, let's go ahead and just we'll follow up with and let you know if anyone has questions, because we can always do that on our media. Tracy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tracy. That was just awesome.
Bye, Shreddy.
That's Shreddy Mercury for anybody who doesn't know.
Look him up. He's rad.
Yep.
All right, Joe, who is next?
Well, next up, we have an individual with a really interesting title. He's the general manager of what is the U.S. Olympic Governing Federation. It's called USA Skateboarding. And he's here to talk about, Chris, actually, you guys prepared for this, so how about if you introduce him?
I will. Is he on yet?
He's coming on, so we can talk about him.
All right, so we'll just talk about him while he can't defend himself. So Daniel Gale of USA Skateboarding is joining us, and I'll tell you, this man is dynamic. He's probably one of the leading experts in adaptive coaching in action sports on earth. And every time I talk to him, I get more inspired and get hungry to learn more and try to understand exactly what this means for the future of skateboarding. So look at this. Here he comes. I'm going to pin him. Daniel, you're muted. So I was just introducing you, just so you know. And hold on, audio problems. I still can't hear you. Testing.
How about now?
Yeah, got you. All right. So I was just.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. You can hear you now.
Right.
I was just telling everybody that you are one of the leading experts in adaptive coaching and action sports, probably in the world. And you've got a very dynamic background. The more I learn about you, the more I listen to you when we have conversations, the more inspired I get to want to know you more and understand what you understand, and become more like you. I'm going to steal everything I can from you. So just fair warning, all your ideas are going to become my ideas.
Right on. Well, I appreciate it.
So, Daniel, will you tell everyone what it is that you do and what your title is and what you're trying to accomplish with skateboarding with through the Olympics, the USOPC, and that sort of thing?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, my name is Daniel Gale. I'm the executive director and co-founder of a nonprofit organization that's actually based at Copper Mountain. I'm here now. So sorry, there's a little background chatter. I'm in our adaptive center here, and we've got USASA Snowboard Nationals that's actually happening as we speak. So there's an IPC event here at Copper Mountain that is kind of the very entry level for snowboarding for individuals to get into the snowboard pipeline. And so I also have recently, so I co-founded the organization in 2005 with my wife Amy Purdy, who's a two-time Paralympian and three-time medalist in para snowboarding. She's the inspiration behind the organization, and certainly a lot of my inspiration to do what I do.
He's inspirational to everyone. But
Yeah.
I've heard her speak before, and she's amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. And so more recently, I was brought on a good friend of mine and somebody I've worked with for a number of years, Johnny Schillereff, was brought on as the new CEO to USA Skateboarding. One of his first pieces of business was to bring me on as the general manager. And so one of the reasons, I think there's a number of reasons that he did that, but of course my expertise in the adaptive field was a part of that motivation. And my plan, certainly, there goes Brett Botello. He's one of our athletes. So I really want to, with USA Skateboarding, create a full pipeline that would eventually lead to having skateboarding into the Paralympic Games. We are far from where we need to be right now, but that being said, it's something that I'm super passionate about and really want to start working towards doing that. And as I step, so my goal here is to step away from my role as executive director here at Adaptive Action Sports, grooming someone to take that position. I'll probably take a chairperson role or a board role, and maybe the chair. And then likely I will come back and coach for the executive director who takes my job. I'll work for the new guy, just because I love coaching so much. It's a part of my DNA, really.
You get to do more than what you love that way.
Yeah, that's right. So that's right. Yeah, I'll be in the field a lot more. And so my goal, certainly with my role at USA Skateboarding, among making sure that the Olympic athletes are taken care of, that we're developing things like a sound coaches certification, that we have a thorough pipeline of programs that lead to the games and to our nationals. I'm sorry that the background noise, I don't know if that's too
fine.
loud.
It's not affecting it at all. You're great.
Okay, great. Yeah, these headphones I have, Logitech's one of our partners, and they produce a good piece of
that was a nice plug right there.
That was good. I'm sorry. Sorry, that was not. It was really genuine. It was really genuine. But yeah, so a lot of the process, I helped to get snowboarding. Our organization helped to get snowboarding into the Paralympic Games early on, and so the process is a long one, and it's something that's pretty complex, and having done that in the past, I think obviously I'm well equipped to do it now. And a lot of that is really centered around classifications, and I think this is going to be a big part of the discussion as we move forward. Currently, there's a couple of competitions that exist. There's a series called the Grind for Life series that is very well run. It's run by a company called The Border. It's mostly Florida-based competitions. Grind for Life's an organization that raises money for cancer treatments for individuals. And Mike Rogers runs that. He's a legend skateboarder.
Awesome.
They have an adaptive program within their series But currently, that adaptive skate program is beginner, intermediate, and expert, and they allow the athletes to self-identify in those categories.
Yeah, you told me about that. That seems loose.
Yeah, it's very loose, but it's it's well intentioned, and I think it's a great starting point.
Yeah.
But from there, what we need to do is really define these classifications moving forward, and have some stick-to-itiveness in regards to those. And at first, it feels very bleak because you're spreading this field out that normally, let's say at a Grind for Life competition, you'd have 10 entries or 20 entries. Once we create the classifications, it spreads them out, and oftentimes you end up with maybe just a single person on a podium. And so it feels a little bit bleak, and the landscape feels barren for a little while. But it's very important moving forward. It's not subjective, right? This has to happen in order for skateboarding to make it to the games.
Yeah.
There has to be a classification system in place that would be acceptable to the International Paralympic Committee.
Just last month, I was going to say, just last month, I got to surf with the U.S. Paralympic team, and it seems that they may be a little further along in classifying, because the athletes that were there was a broad spectrum of abilities.
I think that they are. I think that they are quite a bit further along. They've been doing it for a number of years, and I have it on an insider track that there's a pretty good chance we'll see that happen in LA. But that being said, it's definitely something that just absolutely has to happen.
Yeah.
And I think it could be mirrored after snowboarding, take some of what surfing has. One of the things that I've been able to accomplish over the years, and I could share some pictures here that kind of maybe make this thing a little more interesting if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see.
Can I share? Oh,
yeah. Let me make you, Joe. Will you make him a co-host so he can share?
Yes, working on it.
Just click on his 3 dots there and fire away.
There you go.
Cool. Perfect. So I think, this is just adding a little visuals to what we're talking about here. But one of the things that I've been able to accomplish with skateboarding and snowboarding is I've developed a relationship with both X Games and Do Tour. And I've been able to run a lot of programs through both of those organizations. Essentially, Adaptive Action Sports, my program, runs all the adaptive programming for both X Games and Do Tour. We started back in LA with X Games. We did skateboarding and adaptive Moto X. We brought adaptive border cross to the X Games. We do an adaptive bank slalom at the Do Tour in the winter. We do adaptive skateboarding with Do Tour and X Games. And so this is just an image that I think is just so cool from X Games in Minneapolis. But this individual who these legs belong to, his name is Vinicio Sardi, and he doesn't skateboard with prosthesis. He takes his legs off and he sits on the skateboard. He ended up winning gold, and let me see. I think I have a video here of him.
That so this is sick.
This is
that is awesome. He has so much flow and feel. That is just awesome.
It's wild. So we can just let that play, but I'll keep talking. So
yeah.
This is just, there's a lot of individuals that do this, that sit on the board. And so it opens up a whole nother, class within what we are doing at snowboarding.
Yeah.
So we don't have snowboarders that do this. So how snowboarding currently works is there's an upper limb division. So upper limb impairment or amputation. There's 2 lower limb classes, LL1 and LL2. LL1, I always get it mixed up because you'd think LL1 would be a single below knee amputee, but it's a single above knee amputee. And then there's LL2, which is double below-knee, or no, sorry, I got it mixed up just now. So LL2 is single below-knee amputee, or limb difference, and then LL1 is above knee or double below knee. So for skateboarding, what I'm going to propose, and as we get moving with this, is that we add a third class, which would be an LL3, lower limb 3, and that would be the individuals that sit on the board.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then we have blind skaters. Obviously, this is, I'll play this in the background too, but there's visually impaired skateboarders. This is actually a beeper box that he brought to Do Tour, and so this beeper box throws out a sound and it bounces around the bowl, and he can hear where the transitions start and end.
That is an awesome adaptation. That is
Isn't
so
that
cool.
So rad? I mean, it's just unbelievable.
I just did last fall. I did a big event with Athletes for the Blind, and it was incredible. The way that they approach the skate park is out of this world.
Out of this world. It's so rad. So obviously we'd have a VI class, and then we really want to see the wheelchair class make it as well. There's some things there that need to be discussed as we move deeper into it. But we want to see that happen as well. But so, within the visually impaired, do you break that class itself down depending on how visually impaired an individual is? I think to start, we probably have to put everybody together, and maybe that's the same thing with the wheelchairs, because there's going to be varying levels of paralysis or use of hands. If there's brachial plexus or something that's going on with the hands, then you've got to break those apart even further.
Right.
So this is something that, and this happens, I should say that this happens with para snowboard, with para alpine skiing, with every Paralympic sport. I think that the classification systems are kind of always evolving. And so, it's where do we find a good starting point, and then just evolve from there. And so that'll be my goal in the coming months, is to really try and develop a clear classification system that makes sense for now, and then move from there.
It'd be nice to see as many athletes included as possible. Like that would be, because my son has RP. They're full visual impaired, and I'd love to see all visual impairments competing at that level. It would be just amazing for them,
Right. It's all about, and I think you nailed it on the head. It's just the bottom line is inclusion. And that's exactly why we would do any of this. And so you're right. How do we figure it out so that we can, more inclusion is better? And that of course, that's the end goal. You run into this kind of wall, I should say, when it comes to what is the IPC looking at specifically, and what are the rules around it, and it gets very finite. And so as much as we want to say like everybody's included, we're also limited. We are going to be limited by bylaws, by how things are written in regards to the IPC and those the other sports. There's a lot of compliance things that have to happen before we get there. And so I'm tripping up a little bit. The point I'm making is simply that it's very complex on the road to the Paralympic Games.
Daniel, because whenever there's bylaws, that means there's members that can vote. Let's say someone wanted to get involved and be able to vote on those bylaws as they're developed. Is that something that can be done? Can they join an organization that would allow them to have a voice?
So maybe to some extent. Of course, I think one thing that we want to make sure that we're doing at USA Skateboarding is really listening to the athletes. One of our mantras over there has become just athletes first. We are really focused. That's our core pillar, is athletes. And so I think as this stuff starts to unfold, of course, we're going to build a solid task force underneath the adaptive piece of this. It's just not just going to be me at the wheel. I want to have a lot of expert voices. I want to have voices from the community. And, you know, as we develop this, I think that that'll be critical to make sure that we are listening to, you know, to the community and really understanding needs and wants and listening to concerns. That's absolutely critical. The other thing that's great is once we achieve a certain level of compliance and we're working, you know, with other international federations and organizing things like World Cups and World Championships, the athletes will absolutely have a voice at that point. You know, they'll be a member of either USA Skateboarding or the International Federation, both, and then, you know, certainly at that point, a voice is will be given to the community and to the athletes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you're limited on time today, right?
Sorry, say one more time.
I said, are you limited on time today? I'm checking how much time I have left with you.
I can keep cruising for a little bit. Yeah.
So question then, let's say anyone listening or viewing this wants to get involved and become a coach. What steps would you recommend?
Yeah, for sure. So as both you and Joe and know, we intend to enter into an MOU with you guys and start to develop a thorough coaches certification that'll be, you know, something similar akin to the snowboard certifications with a level 100 and 200. Our intention for sure is that through the coming years, as we grow, you know, our regional events, our local events, and certainly our nationals event, that we will require as USA Skateboarding that every coach who enters the field of play goes through. Oh,
I lost you for a second.
Apparently my, hold on a sec.
This works. We can hear you fine.
This will probably pick up more background noise, but
that's okay.
Yeah, it's our intention to, for sure. We want to make sure that there's a very solid coaches certification. That's just part of the pipeline. It needs to happen. And so, yeah, anybody who enters the field of play will have to have a minimum of a level 100 coaches certification.
Yeah. Is there a place that right now are there tools or anything that you're like top 2 tools you're like, hey, if you're going to get into this, you've got to go read this or you've got to go experience this? Like, what comes to mind for you? You got a ton of experience, and I'm trying to scratch it out of your brain.
Yeah, right on. Well, I appreciate it. So there's a lot of I would say there's a number of organizations, including mine. We run summer programming for skateboarding. We do lessons, we do adaptive clinics. We're going to host a couple of competitions this season based out of my headquarters here. And there's a lot of organizations across the country that are spread out that offer competitions. And I think that's probably a great place for somebody to get started if they're interested in coaching or participating. The Grind for Life series I mentioned earlier is fantastic. There's a great network of people there who either coach or participate. And I think both of those concepts are great. Also, Move United, which we are a chapter of, which is formerly Disabled Sports USA, has a great network. But there doesn't exist right now an adaptive skateboard coaches or instructional certification, and I think it's important that we create that. It's extremely important for the community and to end up achieving our goal of getting into the Paralympic Games.
This is why I'm so excited about working with you, because literally on my list of certification processes for UC, adaptive is the next step. So we got our base level, and adaptive is where we want to go next. Then we're on to our 200 and beyond. And the opportunity to have you and Maya and so many other amazing people contributing to develop this, to make sure it's something that truly honors adaptive athletes, coaches, and skateboarding, all wrapped into something special. That's what I'm so excited about that right now. It's And the more we talk with people, I don't know if you heard this, but we've been working with a lot of school districts to bring skateboarding into schools, and it is at the forefront of their minds. How do you include every student in the school? And I think that really is the first rung on the ladder, or the first step into the pipeline, is elementary school engagement and bringing kids there.
That's awesome. Well, I'm excited you're excited, and we're excited to work with you guys and obviously contribute how we can.
Yep. Well, Joe, do you have any questions for Daniel? Because I know he's in the middle of events.
I think that we should let Daniel go. He's got people who are, I think, more important than us. He's got actual real athletes. And Daniel, there is one thing I'd like to say with our move into creating skateboarding PE. I think we can help you fill the podium in every category in a couple of years. There's going to be a lot bigger participation now. The PE teachers are ready to rock.
That's awesome. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks a lot
All
for
right,
your
Daniel.
time.
Thanks so much. Enjoy the event, man.
Yep. Cheers, guys. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Okay, that was awesome. Quick wrap up on that. Number one, that guy's amazing. And his vision for creating opportunities for adaptive skateboarding, but just skateboarding in general, he's gonna change the world, I think, through skateboarding. I'm excited to be just to know him and have the chance to collaborate even a little bit with that guy. That was impressive. And he packed so much into 15 minutes. That was nuts. like you just wind that guy up and away he went. Anyway, sorry, I'm babbling. Joe, what's next?
Next up is Maya Wheeler, who works with Daniel Gale at USA Skateboarding. And you've been working with him longer than I have. So how about if you give him a little bit of an intro?
Okay, I'm gonna try to embarrass him just a little bit. Okay, so Maya Wheeler's background it just runs deep. He had a long, thriving career in coaching snowboarding and putting athletes on podiums through action sports, but then deviated away from mainstream coaching and went full on committed to helping the U.S. snowboard team and developing adaptive athletes. Now is getting wrapped into U.S. skateboarding as a performance coach. That I believe the head performance coach. You can clarify that. But more importantly, I've worked on some projects with Maya, and it's rare that I feel as impressed by other human beings, and always felt honored just to be around you and spend time with you. So thank you so much for being here and supporting this and allowing us to try to suck some of that knowledge out of your brain. And we're very excited to have you. And maybe you could just introduce yourself and say what your actual title is with USA Skateboarding.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to be here, and thanks for putting this together, guys. My actual title is the High Performance Director and Head Coach for USA Skateboarding.
Okay, that's a cool title.
Yeah, I mean,
did you make that title? Did you get to write it? Okay,
no.
Cool.
Yeah, no, that's and really what that means, it's kind of like I'll compare it to like a major league sports team. Is you have the head coach, right? Who you oversee everything, and you manage your offense, your defense. You're giving them the plans for everything, and then kind of like the end of the line when it comes to decisions. So it's really fun. It's been rewarding, and to embarrass Chris a little bit, I was going through some boxes the other day. He came out with this remember the little project we work on for Burton Snowboarding a long time ago?
Yes.
It had to do with terrain-based learning, and it brought back all these memories and how similar those projects are to any project at a high performance level that we've been working on. The same principles ring true.
That's very cool. That was a fun project. That was Burton getting involved. It's really cool when you see the stars align and you bring in, talented, and passionate people, and you get the opportunity to create something special. And that I thought was a very unique opportunity for the beginnings of competitive snowboarding. And that's what I'm excited about working and collaborating with you guys, is the opportunity to develop things like that for skateboarding, and how we grow because you and I've talked a lot, and I know any coach that works with long-term athletes, you start thinking about that pipeline and how do you put people into it, and how do you grow it, and where does it start? How do you feed it, and how do you inspire people to want to be a part of it? Because skateboarding certainly has a counterculture that maybe is against the competitive pipeline. So there's a lot wrapped up into this conversation, but I was hoping to see where your head's at and how you see that developing and growing.
Sure. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't go over just a little bit more in particular about my history in the adaptive world.
Yeah, please.
It was great listening to Daniel. I've worked with him in a bunch of different capacities over the last 10 years. But when I first met him, I was hired by the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee to develop Paralympic snowboarding in the U.S. Right. So in the process, we did exactly what Dan was talking about with classification systems. And, so I developed the sport, and then I was named the head coach shortly before Sochi in 2014, where we swept the men's podium and we got bronze with his wife on the women's podium in border cross. And that was kind of like the beginning of a very successful, a culture change for that group of people. But also kind of a really strong foundation for adaptive snowboarding. And
so Maya, when you went to work with Daniel as part of U.S. snowboarding for the Paralympic team, were you also a part of helping categorize and develop the team in that way for the U.S.? Yes.
So what I did, so it wasn't the U.S. snowboard team at the time. Just this year, it became part of the U.S. ski and snowboard. But what happens with these, call them emerging sports or disciplines in US OPC, is that, basically I was there to help create the classification system. And I want everybody to understand that it's an extremely political game. First and foremost, you have to have, at least 50% of participating countries that can field a team. And I don't have these numbers right off the top of my head because it's been a little while. Wow. But you have to be able to say that the sport's viable, right? Yeah, just recently, and Dan was kind of touching on it actually. To make it viable, sometimes you have to lump some classes together.
That's why the categorization was just beginner, intermediate, advanced, right?
Yeah, so right.
Make it happen.
Yeah, we weren't quite that loose. Obviously we had the LL1, LL2, UL, which is upper limb. And those are really the three categories. And what's happened, over time is we were able to establish that internationally that we could field teams in each of those categories. Right. What's happened even recently, women have not been able to field a full team of LL2. Right. So that all of a sudden makes it so that LL2 is not eligible to compete.
So LL2, again, explain the categorization, because Daniel shared it earlier, but I want to understand.
Yeah. So you have below the knee amputees.
Right.
LL1, above the knee amputees or bilateral lower leg amputees is the LL1.
Okay. Got it.
Right. So it's just a classification system. So what's happening with those women, I might have just got it mixed up because I listened to Dan. Okay, so we're just going to call it below the knee, above the knee, or bilateral below the knee. Is that they were given the opportunity to compete up, right? Yep. So we can say even though you're above the knee amputee, if you want to compete with the lower, below the knee amputees, we'll let you do that.
Okay.
Right. So what they're doing is they're just basically saying, okay, we don't have the viability in this one category, so it's out for right now until we can show the viability of it.
I seem to recall just this last cycle, there was a female snowboard athlete, who was struggling with that very thing. Is it Brianna?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Yeah, and so it seemed that the categorization caused the elimination of a whole category. This is kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, there was just no one to compete against. And so that's why I say it's, at this high level, at this Paralympic level, it's very political.
Yeah.
It's not just about the feel good aspects. And I hate to say that, I'm going to be very honest with my opinions on these things.
Yeah, I've always appreciated that about you. You get to the point.
Yeah. And so while the reason that we had great success proving the viability of para snowboard was because it was timed. Right. And so
you're saying a timed event?
Yes. You're going down a border cross course, and this is the way it started. It wasn't head to head right off the bat.
Yeah.
The way it first started was just time trials, which means that you start at the top, go through a course, end up at the bottom, and you got a time of 60.
So why not move into, because skate cross is legit. Like, I'm seeing events pop up. We got a guy we work with in Florida who is building courses and leaning into it. Is there a future for skate cross in Paralympic skateboarding?
Yes. I think there's more of a future in starting with something that's easily accessible to a wide number of people than there is to go try to develop a system right now, to develop a system off scores. And let me go back to that.
Yeah.
That top to bottom, let's say you got 60 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
What we could look at is, you could look at how, within those categories, how much of a disability does an athlete have over another one? And you call that a factor, right?
Yep.
It's called a factor. It also might be called a handicap if it was golf.
Right.
In this instance,
I was relating it to golf. I was definitely relating to golf.
Yeah. So with that factor system, then you can it's basically, okay, it's 60 seconds for me to go down. And they say, okay, somebody else has a factor of 5. We'll just call it 5.
So then you can compete together with if you have a greater disability, so to speak, a more limiting disability, then you can compete with someone. So it's that same concept.
So
right?
Somebody goes down at a 6 and gets a 64 second, they got a 5 second, a factor of 5.
Yep. They
actually win.
Yeah. So, and that's the categorization. So that allows you to mix categories to make the sport viable for more. And as Daniel was saying, with blind athletes, for example, some athletes have more vision. Like my son, he's still got 20-degree field of vision.
Right.
And an athlete who's completely limited would then have an opportunity. There would be a factor comparison so that they could compete together.
Exactly.
In some measure. Okay. All right. And when you do that with a judged event, it's really hard to figure out how to factor in scoring.
Well, the way that I think you would do it, because there's so much at play, is that would be a subtraction.
Okay.
Right?
Yep. So it's like if you did, say, a high ollie contest as an adaptive skateboarding contest, you could give people a factor based on height, right? So, and you might be able to measure people that way. So it's something that's measured and not judged. Timed is a measurement that cannot be judged. Right?
Yeah, and I don't know if the high ollie is necessarily. Yeah, you can say that, right? So somebody missing a leg below the knee, they would only have to ollie an inch compared to somebody that was full able-bodied who can ollie a foot, then they still might win. Right,
like Dan the Mancina ollies like crazy, and he's fully visually impaired, and so it would be a totally different factor, right? If you're comparing the two. So I'm thinking outside. You got my brain going. Sorry, I'm nerding out. Continue.
No, and I think to get back to where we were going a minute ago is I felt like I had to flush that idea out.
Yeah.
Is that if we moved into something that was timed,
mm-hmm.
And this is something that Daniel and I talk about. I'm like, hey, how do we get the viability? What's something that people can practice anywhere, right? What are events that are easy, really easy? Do you set some kind of in a rule book, you talk about the course. I think just slalom.
Yeah, you could even do a park. You could do a park slalom too. Like you could figure out that easiest event that anybody could do anywhere would be a downhill slalom, and you'd measure the pitch, right? You'd set the the gates or the cone settings, however you did it, and it's slalom, and it's super easy to recreate over and over and over in every country in the world if they've got a little bit of pavement.
And what I like about it is the accessibility, because we often see, just like, social media, we just see the top tiers. And this is not just with adaptive sports, this is with everything. How do we create something that is accessible anywhere to anybody without the risk factor, right? Or the perceived risk, right? So yeah, like literally a parking lot slalom would be an amazing, I think would be amazing start. One, because it's a timed event. And sure, there's like a bunch of different pieces that go into it, but I think that's a great starting place. And all of a sudden you show this viability and you're building skills, right? So athletes are building skills in this, through this, and then they start to get into park, right? So you're basically developing athletes as you go with a competition.
Yeah, one of the viewers on here, Shreddy Mercury, he said that's my dream. He's a very capable slalom skater and a passion. I guess I'd call him a passionista for it. So it's like, and I agree with you. Like simplifying the format, the venue is the first step, right? That has to be the first step.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of my thoughts, and that's a little bit of the hangover from Dan's talk. But I spoke with Joe for a while yesterday, and I also wanted to preface, the rest of the conversation is that I've really, in the last decade plus, I've really only dealt with very high level elite athletes. My background is in teaching and instruction. And so I felt like it was important to kind of preface a lot of this with that I've been dealing with, these high level athletes. And the caveat to that is, you know how you treat them?
Like everybody else.
Just like everybody else. That's right, Tracy.
Yeah.
Oh, you heard me?
Yeah. Oh, Tracy's thinking out there. You're not muted, Tracy, but that's fine. It was perfect timing.
That was perfect.
Beautiful.
I was waiting for somebody to say that.
What? I didn't know you could hear me.
Well, Maya, yesterday we were talking about your approach to working with adaptive athletes, and what you said applies to all athletes. And you used the human word.
Yes. I mean, and I think Chris knows this, that, we've talked a lot about coaching philosophy, and, I've kind of boiled my mind down to a humanistic approach. And some parts of that are, first is empathy, is trying to put myself in somebody's shoes. How do they feel, right? The second part of that is compassion. How do I react to that? Now that I know how somebody feels, how am I going to react to that? It's not necessarily what they want to hear, but it's what they need to hear, right? In a compassionate way. And so I kind of boil that down to what I call it's a humanistic approach. I don't believe that the best coaches have the best technical or tactical skill sets.
Yeah.
The best coaches have the soft skills to relate to people. And I think that, Andy, right off the bat, I was like, I don't even need to come on, because Andy just basically gave away all my secrets.
Yeah, he nailed it.
Yeah, he nailed it. So, it's not even a secret. It's just like, as human beings relating to other human beings, and in my case, I'm looking for the highest performance possible. I really don't, I say this loosely, I don't care what your body does or doesn't do, right? I don't care what color you are. I don't care, what your disability is. If we're looking for high performance, there's a key to it, right? And again, I'm not saying that high performance is just for elite athletes. I think that everybody can achieve a state of high performance, right? It's what does it mean for you as a person? You could be a terrible athlete, but you can still achieve a state of high performance.
Can
Yeah, agreed.
you explain that?
Explain.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
What is a state of high performance?
For me, a state of high performance is mentally functioning in a fashion that you can do whatever you'd like to do.
Yes. Yeah, it's well stated.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't, it could be, you know, so I have a consulting business. I work with, I've worked with some people over the last couple of years that are, you know, Fortune 500 CEOs, and they have the same problems that we have.
Yeah.
And so high performance to me is actually, you know, you talked a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're at, you know, at the very bottom, we have the basics, food, shelter, right? And at the very top, we have self-actualization. So high performance to me is working towards that self-actualization.
Right. And what, you know, so take it as a general approach though, achieving that state of high performance. You got good example, or do you have a process that you can define, like an example of you doing that with an athlete, or a process you can sort of define loosely?
Sure. Don't overthink it. It's very, very simple. Right now I'm working with some of the best skateboard athletes in the world, if not the best.
Yes, you are.
Start very small. It takes 66 days to change, to create a habit, right? And you start with stuff that doesn't even, it's about progression, right? And I'm going to get into that probably a little bit later, so I'm not going to beat that one up. I've got one skater right now who just turned 18. He's looking for the key to unlock. He wants to find flow state.
Yeah.
His very first assignment is to wake up, drink a glass of water, and brush his teeth.
As simple as that.
It's as simple as that.
I love that. There's a Navy admiral who talked about the first thing he does every day. He gets up, same time, makes his bed, first thing he does. And he says it sets the entire day up for structure and success. And he's a high performance guy, right? If you're an admiral in the Navy, you're at the top of performance.
And he wrote a book about it called Make Your Bed.
Yeah, it's great. He's a great guy. Very, very, very interesting stuff.
So flow state, you guys just hit a really interesting thing. We've got educators who are listening to this, and we're typically, most of our educators are dealing with beginners, but every now and then you'll have, it's not exactly a black swan, it's a numbers game. You'll have a talented person in your class who's able-bodied or other able. What is the flow state is important to somebody who's heading there. What is a flow state? And how do you go from beginner to flow state?
I know how I define it. I want to hear how Maya defines flow state.
Oh man. If I knew I was going to talk about flow state, I'd be a little more prepared.
just you're loose.
I think flow state is when you tap into a realm of performance that's effortless and it comes without thinking.
Yes.
And it's not just for sports. It's not just how we use our body. That's the thing is we've got to boil everything down to the lowest common denominator. We've got to point to how people have accessed these performance or these flow states in other areas before we can ask them to tap into it doing a sport.
Right.
So some of us have achieved flow state by reading a book, right? You're so into the book that it's just happening, and the reading is effortlessly. You're not making yourself read from sentence to sentence, right? Some of us, it happens when you're looking at art.
I see people achieve it in cooking all the time. And
right.
I've watched Joe prepare some of the most amazing Kung Pao chicken. Like, he spent 40 years in China. The man knows how to make Kung Pao chicken like you would not believe. And I watched him create it. I'm going, oh, he's just in it. He's lost in it right now. It's so cool to see. And it's just cooking with a book.
And a lot of times, like you'd go to somebody afterwards and say, how'd you do that? And they're going to go, I don't know. I just did it.
Yeah.
Right. But
you're in the zone. Is it like being in the zone?
It's exactly the same thing.
Yep. There's a man named Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, and he spent maybe 40 years studying flow state, and he calls it it's the optimization of performance. Read his book. absolutely dive into that. And it's so interesting to recognize when it's happening and then what pulls up an athlete out of it, right? And I think that's when you can create an environment and habits that allow an athlete to live there, you are winning. And when you see an athlete come out of it, they do not understand why nothing works anymore. It's like, why doesn't it work anymore? Why can't I do this anymore? Yeah. It's like, well, it's because you operate in the world of feel and flow. And right now you might need a little knowledge and understanding. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it really, it comes down to, how do you teach people to access that state on demand?
And recognize it and recognizing it. Yeah. Well said.
We're a little bit off subject. Even we're talking to educators. This is the Adaptive Skateboard Summit. So how can we apply flow state to adaptive skateboarding education? These are educators who are watching.
Yeah. I think it's a tricky question because there's a lot that goes into it. You can't expect to access flow state very quickly. Flow state, I believe, if you're to say it for a sport, I would say that you have to, you can certainly experience some flow state. Okay, here's a good example. It's going to take a while for somebody once they first start skating. I think that Andy did a great job of saying, hey, starting in the grass, standing on one foot in the grass, that might take whatever, couple weeks, couple months, whatever. Once you start moving around and pushing around and maybe learning how to turn your board, that's when you can start tapping into it, I think. I think that flow state is very contingent on comfort. I'd actually like to take it away from skateboarding and talk about driving real quick. When we all first started driving, we were very concerned with, hey, in my case, where's the stick shift, right? Because that was how it was.
Yeah, right. Me too.
30 plus years ago. Where are my feet on the pedals? Am I using the right pedals? And that's why teenage drivers are so sketchy, right? It's because we're actually not even looking at anything but like what's inside the car. We get a little bit more comfort and we start to say, okay, there's a stop sign, right? There's a pedestrian, there's XYZ, right? So our sphere of influence is getting a little bit bigger. It probably takes a year or two when we're driving down the highway and we're just like noticing, oh, it's so pretty out, right? This is beautiful. And then the next step is, I wonder if I locked the front door. I guess what I'm saying is there's a huge difference between when you first start driving and what you're thinking about and where you are now 5, 10, 15 years later.
Yeah.
Your sphere of influence is so much bigger that you're allowed to access that flow state without all the concerns. So I guess I think there's got to be a certain level of mastery with something. Now, it doesn't have to be mastery at like a Nigel Houston level of skateboarding. But I think that, I think somebody like Andy, and his group, when they're just making turns or Tracy, like just cruising around, having fun, like I think we're all accessing flow state to varying levels.
I think it truly happens when, and Maya, you can add to this, but I think it truly happens when the environment is set up so that the athlete can execute whatever it is they want to execute without fear, without thought, without high pressure, right? And so with the athletes that Maya works with, these are, as you said, the best athletes in the world. I got to work with Shaun White for a little bit, and I can tell you that when the pressure's not there, he would just execute, and then he could be Shaun White. When everything else is overwhelming, then flow state breaks down. And the mission for any educator on here listening is to set the environment up so that whatever it is, the first step in WCMX, or the first step onto a skateboard, if you're a single leg amputee, the first step, the first step that you take with a blind athlete is so simple that they can experience a sense of understanding that it's close to mastery very fast, so that they can just live in it. And then you increase the difficulty slowly over time to challenge them to grow to that next level of mastery, or mastering the next thing. And so that whenever whatever they're doing, they're in a place where they can operate as a master. And if we're talking about someone who's got no experience, well, that defines the difficulty of the task you should be setting up for the student. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I think that's spot on. I mean, it kind of gets back to a word I said earlier, is if the progression is right, you're going to have so many victories and opportunities to access that mastery or that flow state. I think that's spot on.
Yeah, well stated. Okay, Maya, timing wise, I want to take the next just couple minutes for you. Just if you were going to guide someone into developing as an adaptive coach, where do you point them? And give us like your top two things, or top one thing of like, start here, and this is the next step you're going to take.
Yeah, I would say find for adaptive coaches. There's so many clubs around the country. I would say first and foremost is go volunteer at a club.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Get to know, get familiar, and get comfortable with all forms of disability. I again, with my humanistic approach, I think that I think that certifications are great, but I think time in the field is really where you learn the most.
Certification should just be a byproduct of your success as an experienced coach. It shouldn't be the other way around.
Yeah. And then, too, I just like, I'd say look for other experiences where you can support people. Human beings with any kind of disabilities. Like, it's one thing to do something, at a local skate park, but two, if you can go find other interactions, I know there's like some grind for life stuff, or, as USA Skateboarding, rolls out our whole program, that, going to those events and interacting with other like-minded people, I think is huge.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'll recommend Blind Athletes Associations. There are chapters all over the US. And if you want to change your life, just go get in there and hold hands and skate. It's incredible. Well, ask first if it's okay to hold hands, then skate.
Yeah.
I should say. Maya, thank you so much, man. That I would love to actually, if you're into it, it'd be cool to interview you again. I'd love to interview you and pick your brain more and share it with people. But what you and Daniel are doing, and what you've already accomplished, by the way, big success not long ago with your athletes, what you're already doing and what you're going to do for skateboarding is game changing. And what you guys are going to bring for adaptive skateboarding, I mean, my hope and wish is that we can be a part of helping a lot more people find their own sense of empowerment through skateboarding together. So,
yeah, cool. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I really enjoyed it, and I'll look forward to. We didn't even talk about anything that we were going to talk about.
That happens.
There's a lot. We're going to be we're working with you on developing all the coaching programs. We'll have plenty of time, and I'm sure that there's going to be more interviews and more chats with you. And if anybody has any questions, send them to me. We'll share them out. We'd love to hear some questions.
Thank you, Maya.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, peace, brother.
Bye.
All right, next up, we have Josh Spolstra.
Yeah, Josh Spolstra is up. I'm communicating with him. He's supposed to be ready. If you want to do the introduction, he should be on in just a sec.
Yeah. So Josh is a longtime adaptive instructor and coach, has spent time developing programming for one of the leaders in certification in the snow sports, which is an organization called PSIA and AASI. This one organization with two names sounds odd, but it is what it is. That organization has put a lot of time into developing and supporting, on snow adaptive training. And Josh has actually joined up with us and is collaborating with us to develop, to help develop and sort of guide the direction of our first adaptive certification course. And we'll be working, obviously there's some talented human beings that thankfully we have access to help develop this. And this will certainly not be developed in a silo or in one person's mind. The goal here is to bring in as much information as we can to create a very robust program that will help a lot of people.
Chris, I just heard from Josh. He's having some technical difficulties, so we've all been there. He's restarting, and you just reminded me that there's an opportunity for everybody to go out and do something to get new people on board coming up in May.
Oh yeah, we have Learn to Skateboard Day. Now we started this. It's a lot like there's also a Go Skateboard Day, which happens in June. We wanted to focus everyone's energy and attention on bringing people into the sport. And so Learn to Skateboard Day is literally, it's purely a focus on teaching people how to skateboard or learning how to skateboard, and posting up your experiences with the hashtag Learn to Skateboard Day. And I
It's May 20th this year.
May 20th this year, and it would be Learn to Skateboard Day. Will we put the 2023 on it? Is that the tag, Joe, or do we just go Learn?
No, it's just Learn to Skateboard Day. Just do it on the hashtags Learn to Skateboard Day, and the whole idea is just to get new people on board. So get out there, get your hands out with permission, and support people who are learning to skateboard.
Anything you want to share too. It's if you want to create a quick tip, post it up, like do it and tag it. And if you're going to teach somebody, awesome. I've sort of have this crazy vision of one day, Learn to Skateboard Day, we get with the Guinness people and see how many people we can teach how to skateboard in one day. And what would be incredible this year is to see people posting up learning how to skate as that are in any of the adaptive categories we've talked about today. But that I have not seen yet, and I would love to see that. I'd love to see people learning how to skate with any ability. And I'm sort of culturing myself to recognize disabilities as instead of seeing the disability, seeing the ability. And I'll share really quickly on that. I said earlier to Daniel that I got to go surfing with the U.S. disabled surf team, and I have to tell you that I watched these people surf, and not only was it like inspiring to the point of, like just breaking your soul, but it was awesome. It was some of the best surfing I've ever seen up close in person. In many cases, it was awesome. And the idea that having a disability actually limits a person's potential, I don't see it yet. Human potential is only limited by the creativity of the individual. And that's, I think, the biggest lesson I'm learning as I get more opportunities to work with athletes and students that have a disability of any kind.
So right now, Josh is still going through. He's restarting his computer right now. Any questions from anybody who's watching?
Yeah, Shreddy actually asked, is it May 22nd for Learn to Skateboard?
May 20th, and I'm putting the hashtag in right there.
There we go. Perfect. And if maybe just post up our website too, just so people can find it, because we always set up a landing page for the event. Oh, I see Josh. There he is. It's coming in through the waiting room. He's navigating and surfing and skating through the challenges of digital.
All right, so Josh has a hard stop at 12:50. He's got 20 minutes, and then we'll wrap.
That's perfect. Hello, Josh Spolstra.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
So Josh has many credentials, lots of certifications. None of them are probably even that important to him. think the thing he holds most dear is helping people learn how to do anything. And that's one of my favorite things about Josh. So Josh, if you want to introduce yourself, and I should mention, Josh works with Powder Resorts and Woodward. He has direct ties into developing programming for, action sports programming for Woodward, and has a tremendous amount of experience in all of the sports we've been talking about today. But Josh, tell people what you do and what you're about real quick. We'll do a quick introduction.
Well, thanks, Hargrave. My title is called the Director of Skier Services, which is a great way to be able to go play out on snow and with people, which is awesome. I still get to dive into the coaching world when I can. It's not on an everyday basis, but I do a lot of the programming for any of the education that happens up on the mountain, whether it's winter, spring, summer, fall, so year round, skiing and snowboarding, mountain biking, and then even other programs that we're looking into, which is awesome. And then just being involved with the Education Association over on the ski and snowboard side for many, many years, and always trying to keep my ear to the grindstone on that one. So
tell me a little bit about your experience with adaptive instruction and coaching through the snow sports. Maybe share a little bit of that.
Yeah, I had an awesome opportunity one time to have a guest come to us and wanted to learn how to snowboard. And this was over 20 years ago. And we didn't really have much of a formal process for it on the snowboard side. We did on the ski side, but not on the snowboard side. And this guest really wanted to learn how to snowboard. So why would I want to get in his way? And that's what started. And it was up in Mount Shasta, small little tiny resort. And this guy just wanted to get out on snow, and he used to go on snow. And then all of a sudden he was getting hemmed up because we didn't offer it. And I was like, well, I'll offer it. We can do it. And I remember my director at the time looked at me, she goes, but there's not adaptive snowboarding. And I think one of the coolest parts about adaptive, no matter what it is, snow sports or not, is I just looked at her and said, everything is adaptive. And
pretty good response.
So I just adapted the lesson to the needs of my guest. And it was really that simple for me. It wasn't a complex problem to solve. It looks like it's complex, and it looked like it was. Comes in stroke survivor and not being able to move pretty much half of his body, hemiplegia. And I was like, oh, we got this. Because he had the motivation. And so that really started it. And I went from there and helped create more of a process for other instructors and for other guests to be able to have a pathway in snow sports. Exactly
why I've tapped you to help develop and lead the charge on our adaptive certification process, because of the creativity. And that's the thing I think that I get the most excited about, is listening to how people talk about creatively overcoming any limitation. And that's what I mean when I say I don't think there's any limit to human potential. It's because of our ability to think and be creative. And maybe you could give a couple examples of that kind of creative thinking that leads to successful adaptive teaching.
Well, I have one concrete one, and it goes beyond that, because there's the concrete force, like you said, Hargrave, example, but then behind that is the theory, and that everything is adaptive, and right. we can do it. And so we had a guest come up and really limited on the performance of his equipment. And I looked at it, I was like, okay, he independently isn't able to rotate the board. I was like, you got to be able to rotate the board. You got to be able to pivot the board and rotate the body to be able to make some turns happen, especially at a lower level. And I looked at it and I was like, I just started putting pieces together, like, okay, what can I help? What can I add? What can I aid? And I was really big into mountaineering, mountain guiding, and rock climbing at the time. And so I had all the gear, and I looked at this guy and I was like, you know what? I bet if I could get him to rotate his hips, he can make link turns. That's what I need to get him to do. just from deduction of enough time. And so through a lot of trial and error, I put a climbing harness on him and learn a different way of being able to loop the tethers around to be able to help guide him. And as soon as I was able to get his hips to rotate and assist him to rotate, he had enough independence he could sense it, he can feel it. That's one of the big ones for Hargrave, right? You got to be able to feel what you're doing a lot of times.
Yes.
And one of the senses, you got to be able to feel it. And he caught on, and I was able to just let loose the tethers and get this guy independent.
That's awesome.
So then it just skyrocketed from there.
So adaptive apparatus are anything that you can create to help someone, experience the sensation and then learn from that, create muscle memory through that, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And the key that I learned from it is because I was a kind of a gear junkie, being a mountain climber and rock climber, is I was really stoked to be able to use the gear for this person. And then I realized that my motivation was to be able to use the gear, not to be able to facilitate his learning. Right? I caught myself and I went, oh my gosh. And I stopped myself in my tracks and I was like, I just made this lesson about me. Like, screw that. That's not what we do. That's not what we should be doing. It's about the guest that's in front of me. And I've really been able to take that with me to heart every time you go out there on a lesson, whether, if it's classified adaptive or not.
That's really good. That's like, as you were talking, inspired me to have a thought. And then I was excited to say my thought right at the end of what you were going to say. And, that's that moment where we have to catch ourselves and really listen to what you were saying and then lean into asking another question. Because what I wanted to say was, yeah, that's exactly it. We have to listen with the intent to understand, right? That's a great thing to say. Throw that out. I want to ask more questions, right? So if what I'm hearing you say is that you recognized in the moment something about yourself, the things that trigger you, and you started to manage and set up a parameter for you in the way that you think and approach that student. So instead of getting lost in the gear and that sort of thing, how does that work now? Are you more in tune with that? Is it something that you've become so disciplined about that you don't slip back into going, it's all about the gear, it's all about me?
Well, no, it's something that has to be conscious. And I want to stay conscious about it because that helps me stay humble. And the more humble educator that we have, the more they're going to reach out and connect with the learner's styles, the learner's preferences, their motivations, their goals. And so it becomes more of a facilitation rather than a dictation.
A facilitation rather than a dictation. I like that. It's that idea of you learn with, you don't teach how, right? And everybody wants to have the answers. These are the 5 perfect steps. No, the 5 perfect steps are going to be different for everybody. And that's your point. You just gave me a little epiphany. That's what you mean by every lesson is adaptive, because the steps change for everybody. Yeah.
Steps change. Yeah. I mean, how many times that you and I have worked together, Hargrave, and we'll be out in the middle of a clinic and you or I, or both of us, have never done that clinic before.
Yeah. Yes. With those people.
Right. Because we haven't. And so it's constantly evolving and adapting to the learners and what the goals are. Okay.
So that is a great intro into like the heart of who you are, which I love you. And it's so cool to have people on this call that I just have such tremendous respect for today. Like, it's been so awesome. But the question I have for you now is, let's say I'm going to go through a course that's going to train me up and prepare me to have the basics of being an adaptive instructor. What are the key elements of focus that I need to develop so that I have that arsenal to carry me through, my first lesson? See what I'm asking?
Yeah, no, I do. And it's great because Andy was the first speaker today, and he really touched on it a lot. And then the previous one, Maya, who just spoke, he touched on it as well, quite a bit. But it's a very simple mathematical equation for me. And
okay, what lay it out for me? I gotta hear
lay it
this.
out there.
Making notes.
So there's only so much that you start with adapting, because if you looked at everything, you said, I have to adapt all of it all at once, it is too overwhelming. And you don't, right? The shark doesn't eat the carcass whale all at once. Right?
One bite at a time. Okay.
One bite at a time. And so I like to look at the main two areas is the intellectual side and then the physical side. The third one, and Annie touched on it a lot today, was the social and emotional. So there's 3 areas, and you can have a combination of all 3 or mainly one and not the other, or 2 of the 3. And that part can get variable, but it starts with those 3.
Okay.
And so intellectual, physical, and then social emotional. And you look at it and go, just take a step back and you just add one element, right? It's like waking up in the morning and making your bed. I'm not going to finish the day at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm starting the day with one thing. And so is there something in the intellectual side that I need to tap into and adapt? Do I need to ask more questions to get more answers and to get more of what's behind that guest or that athlete, right? Our skater.
And when you say intellectual, you're talking about your approach?
No. If there's any type of intellectual or
Disability.
cognitive difference or disability, yes.
Difference or disability.
Yes.
So difference. And hey, quick thing. Talking about this, if you're a person like that doesn't have disabilities per se, and you call them disabilities, is that appropriate, or is it differences? Is it abilities? Where's your head at on that?
There's a couple different camps, but I bet the best one is the person with a difference, the person with a disability, rather than the amputee.
Yeah. So the person, got it.
And then from there, because it's sincere and it's from the heart, most people are going to be very willing and approachable that way.
Okay. So back to what you're saying, the first category is the thought process is determining if there's an intellectual or cognitive concern, and then asking questions to understand how that works. So once you recognize it, then you ask questions and you learn as much as you can. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. And then let's say that that you have a common framework of like a 3-step or a 4-step that's going to get them to be able to balance on one foot in the grass and learn how to push.
Right.
And, okay. Well, can I give them 1, 2, or 3 steps all at once?
Yeah. Right.
Right. You realize, right? Actually, no. They're in a concrete frame of mind. They can only think of one thing at a time, and so you just back away and you're like, okay, now I'm only going to explain one thing at a time.
Right.
Am I showing them at the same time that I'm explaining it? Because maybe they're so cognitive, separate from you that they're not going to be able to understand without seeing it.
Yeah.
And oh, okay, am I still moving too fast? And you just keep breaking it down until there's that one element that they do, and they do successfully. You're really great at that, Hargrave, by the way. Just breaking it down, micro steps.
It's all an accident.
No, it's not. And so that's a really great way to be able to do it. And, let's say that it was someone with a physical disability or a difference. And you have, like we were talking
This is category 2, sort of, in
category 2.
Of how you approach the student. Approach the student first, intellectual, then you're checking physical. And maybe you don't gravitate, it's not an order, but
it's not an order. No.
But you're recognizing each one of these categories. Okay.
Yeah.
Physical is this next category.
Yep. And you look at it and, kind of like the skater that was at the X Games that we were watching, right?
Yeah.
That was skating on both of his residual limbs.
Blowing my mind.
Prosthesis.
Yeah.
Right. So if you notice what was happening, it was really cool for me to be able to see it, is he was using his full spine for absorption.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I was looking, is it hips or is it hips and spine? That's what I was thinking when I was watching. That's funny
Yeah.
that
Yep.
I was
Yeah,
totally
and
geeking
so,
out.
and so you look at that and you go, okay, here's someone that doesn't have organic ankles or knees.
Yeah,
And in skating and snowboarding and all those sports, we need suspension,
right.
some sort of suspension, right? Even in the casters that Tracy had, right? She
So
had
if you,
suspension in those casters.
so if you don't have it in the body to create the suspension, that's when you have to build an adaptation.
There you go. You worked with the person first. Yep.
Okay. So
Yep.
you recognize their limitation and the requirements of absorption in this case, the ability to absorb, and you go, okay, do we need to create something or can we work with what we got?
Yep, exactly. And that athlete in the X Games, he was working with what he had.
Yeah,
Right.
it was awesome. I was looking even what the interface was between the legs and the board, and it looked like some kind of a rubber material, but like maybe something customized for each limb.
Yeah, pretty much like a shoe.
Yeah,
with some cushion.
And that's the really, from what I could tell, it was the only adaptation that I saw.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And the adaptation, define an adaptation, because I keep saying that, and I've only am just learning to use that term.
Yeah. Anything that you need to change or move away from a standard. Let's call it that.
Okay.
And so you have a standard of history over the last 30 or 40, 50 years of what skateboarding is and what it looks like. And it is changing and it's evolving, but they're still out there. You go, okay, here's a standard. Is there anything that I need to adapt to be able to get what Maya was saying, the high performance?
Yeah, well, and back to the skater we were talking about, there are some trucks that I've seen that actually the truck flexes, and they're incredible trucks that I think provide a significant amount of absorption. And I was thinking about that skate when I watched them. I'm like, wow, I wonder if that's because it would go back to a feel thing. He may not want that, but at the same time, like my mind instantly went to, okay, well, how do we put absorption into the construction of the trucks and or the board, right?
Yeah. Just a simple adaptation.
Yeah. Okay. There you got my mind going. I love this. I love how you're framing this up. It's really helping me.
Yeah. And so it really is. And then the third one, and Andy hit it really well, is he was talking about the emotional.
Yeah.
He was talking about being embarrassed and how that changed his whole approach to skateboarding.
Yeah. Like where they would skate.
How they would skate.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Right. Who was watching, who was not watching. And so if you took the whole scenario and you looked at it all at once and you try to engage everything, it's too much. It's the whole whale carcass. You're not going to. And so you look at something and you go, okay, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3. Okay, is there anything intellectual that I need to have any adaptation for? Yay or nay? Okay, is there anything physical that I need to have an adaptation for? Yay or nay? Okay, what's going on socially and emotionally that I need to adapt? Yay or nay? And you just very slowly and methodically work through each one of those, and it is one bite at a time, and with that empathy towards your student just wanting to learn.
Okay, so which one do you start with? You've been doing this for a long time. Where do you start? Do you go to intellectual first? Is that normal for you?
Sometimes, no, you don't. I don't.
Is it because I would imagine, like, if I'll give you an example, surfing with the U.S. Paralympic team.
Yep.
I instantly saw disabilities, and I went, okay, wheelchair, okay, I saw different levels. I recognized immediately there was a blind athlete there. I mean, instantly, and I went, okay, my mind clearly I was going right into these the physical because I could see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't see it, then maybe the process is, okay, well, I know I'm working with an adaptive student today. I don't see anything. So now it must, I need to probably open my mind to the intellectual side and the cognitive realities of the lesson, right? Or maybe the social emotional, those affective realities of the student, or right? Does that make sense?
It does. And it really is, though, Chris, you and I have been working with athletes of all ability levels, from first time never evers all the way up to the Olympic level. And they could be having a physical issue because of an emotional state of mind. They could be so blocked intellectually, they cannot think of what is next, and they cannot put their run together.
Yeah.
And so it really is very, and that's what I'm trying to get at, is every single lesson is adaptive, and it is your athlete, your skater, whoever it is, centric around them. And so if I'm in a great state of mind, and I don't care if you make fun of me or not, right? I want you to beat me down like physically to get better, because I'm in a great state of mind and I am okay with who I am socially and emotionally at that time. So just work it hard on that physical side of things, and let's just break down some, some barriers and get some goals going.
Oh my gosh, I want to interview you further. I know you're limited on time.
I do have a couple more minutes I can
Okay, so then let me ask you this. Just give people maybe a sneak peek at what they could expect to see as we develop the Adaptive Coaches Certification supplement.
Look at the athlete first. And let's start with some simple math. The three main areas that you will adapt for any of your athletes: the intellectual, the cognitive, that's one; the physical, that's two; and or the social emotional, that's three. If you have that mentality going into it, that every lesson is adaptive, that you can look at those three and just either deduce or add. From there, you're going to start asking the right questions, and you're going to start getting the right goals. Anytime from there, the next thing that we'll be working through, Hargrave, is anytime you take one thing away, let's take 1 sense away, let's take one cognitive set of skill away, let's take one physical joint away, you're going to always want to add in multiples. It's not a 1-for-1. If I take sight away, I'm not only going to be talking about it, I'm going to have that tactile information happening so much. There's going to be touch here, touch this, feel this, along with the sound.
So recognizing the loss of the lack or loss of one thing leads to multiples. So example that in an amputee.
Okay. So let's say that it's a fixed ankle on a prosthetic.
Okay.
Because they don't work as well as a regular ankle.
No, definitely not.
They have very limited range of motion and absorption.
Yeah.
And so you are going to need to see from the knee and the hip flexion and extension.
Okay.
You have to. You
and
cannot.
So let's say there's no knee flexion. It's just
go one more up.
So now it's hip and spine because it's multiples.
And so take the athlete from the X Games and look at how he was rolling his spine and flexing his spine along with his hip, right?
Yeah, got it.
Yep.
That's cool math. So that's another chunk. What else?
Yep. I said it already, but being able to stay humble and make that connection, because anytime that I take my pride and my ego, and we're going to be talking about it a lot in this, is then it becomes my lesson. It becomes my coaching environment. It becomes my clinic and not theirs.
Yeah, I love what Maya said that is directly in line with this. He talked about empathy and compassion. So can you feel what they're going through, and then can you be compassionate in your approach to building a relationship with them? And that sounds like this category. I mean, we got to get Maya involved in this too. Like,
oh heck yeah,
yeah.
And another one is, and I did more of a what we don't want to do is we're not an encyclopedia, and we shouldn't be an encyclopedia. we have these cool little things right here that give us answers instantly.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we can take the time to make sure that we are connecting at a human level. I don't know how many times that this group today said it, of the humanness of what we do.
Yeah, you're talking, I keep making notes, but yeah, you don't have to know it all. You have to be humble and willing to learn.
Yeah, actually, someone coming in thinking that they know it all is actually the worser instructor.
Almost always. I remember being that guy. Oh no, wait, no, I was never that guy.
I like the coaches who say let's.
Yeah, Joe, that one's awesome. I know that I had an athlete one time that I told him to stand up and go faster for 5 years, 6 years. And then I was coaching him through it, and I would move him through it, and I would put him in different environments. And I was doing this and doing that. And he was a great student, but he got so mad at me for a while, the first couple of years that I was working through all this. And he was just like, all you're doing is telling me to stand up and go faster. I was like, yeah, but can you look at how much more you've developed? Look at where I just took you today, and you would have freaked out last month. Look at how much you've climbed in your education. Like Chris, you said it before, your certifications are just a byproduct, right? I mean, he was just like flying through his certifications, flying through them, becoming the higher and higher level instructor, and being able to work with so many different people. And all of a sudden it was an epiphany for him. And he goes, oh my gosh, there is so much that you had that, packed in. Very simple, Joe. Less is more, right? I didn't need to tell him, the 15 different steps that I needed him to do besides stand up, because I knew if he just stood up when he was railing his carbs or doing this or doing that, he would have got it. And he was getting it. And so I love that, Joe. Less is more. What
else would you add? Because I feel like you've identified some critical areas of focus that we'll be developing into the course.
The one that we were talking about earlier, and we just kind of touched on a little bit, but I'm focusing on the ability of what they can do and what they can achieve, and not the disability.
I like that.
And then I'm always wanting to strive towards as much independence as possible.
So that the gradual release of responsibility in that process, right? Because that's cool. Good stuff, Josh. What am I missing?
Let's just keep doing this. This is great.
Okay, so I think the mission here is, as we develop this, right, this will be introductory information to give people a clear understanding of how to approach an adaptive opportunity. And then as it goes further, and as Daniel and Maya work to help categorize what competitive skateboarding might look like, and as we identify different adaptations that would be used for different abilities, then we'll expand this into understanding how to operate some of those mechanisms, how to work with people through that. I know, in snow sports, there are sit skis, bi skis, there's track, there's all kinds of different tools that are used that you have to be well versed in. I love what Tracy said earlier too, about, well, I just put them in my chair and so they can experience it. Well, duh, that was awesome. I was like, yeah, okay, that's where you start. Like, you got to experience what it's like to skate in a chair and know what that feels like. And that ability, that only increases a person's ability to have empathy and compassion for the experience of the student and the athlete. So I like where we're headed with this. And Josh, like, your approach to it, you just started to like chunk it together. And I think Maya was going to do that too, but we derailed him by talking about all kinds of other things. So,
I like that conversation. It was great.
Yeah. Well, if you're a nerd and you're a coach, it's not hard to get lost in conversation talking about nerdy coaching stuff. So, and he's, he seems like a very cool nerd, but he's still a nerd. He knows he's just too smart to not be a nerd. But Josh, thank you so much. This was amazing. And I think for anybody watching in, obviously if anybody has questions for Josh or any of the other people who participated today, we'll help get you in contact with them or relay messages along. But there seems to be a lot of people in this world who want to make a difference through something. And I personally think, why shouldn't it be skateboarding? Why should we not be changing lives for adaptive students on a skateboard? I think, earlier I mentioned that young man who took his life. I can't tell you how many countless stories I've read about veterans, about people that were injured, that have lost, some ability in their life, and it changes, and they can't see a way around it, or there's not something that gives them that hope or that passion. And knowing Josh really well, and Josh knows me, we are people of passion. Once we find something we love, we lean in completely. And without that, I know I wouldn't feel whole as a person. And that's definitely an emotional thing. But
together, a flimsy case, because he feels like, hey, this is how I got here. I've got to do it. And
I think we need to figure out how to make this opportunity more available for people to find maybe themselves through skateboarding, and have a focus, a purpose, and a passion that keeps them in the game. And that's what life is. Life is more about making sure that you don't let the world beat you to the ground and hold you there, that you find something that inspires you to pick you up and keep you moving forward. And I love that skateboarding does that for people. I love that sport does that for people. It's my favorite aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, agreed. Thank you, Hargrave. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the group. This is awesome. Let's continue this. And I'm excited for the future of skaters and soon to be skaters out there. So I appreciate you all. So thank you.
Yeah, brother. Thanks for closing it out for us. That was awesome.
Thanks everybody who sat through this, especially Tracy and Shreddy. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Our goal is to help you learn how to skateboard and understand more about skateboarding. If this video helped you, be sure to hit us up in the comments below and tell us what you'd like us to focus on for our next video. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, and then subscribe to our channel and tell your friends all about us. If you'd like to learn more about the United States Skateboard Education Association, please visit www.ussea.us, where you can learn more about how to skate, learn more about helping others learn how to skate, and become a certified skateboard coach.